We've just been talking in the office here about how many of us have been attacked at some point or other by some form of flying beast or any wildlife. I mean, so we'll take your stories this morning.
Hello, this story is concerning wildlife. It's concerning a rhino.
A rhino?
Right? Yeah,
okay.
rhino. I used to live in
the people smash the smash.
And he hasn't smashed anything. I mean, literally all he does is he smashes records every sort of couple of weeks, where more and more people come in a period of 24 hours.
Smash the gangs that are running this vile trade.
You're never going to smash the gangs. That's something that basically is impossible. The gangs are like the Hydra. You cut the head off and another two grow.
So I did write to ministers and say that I wasn't convinced that smashing the gangs was the right sort of way of thinking about things.
We will smash the gangs that undermine our security.
Keir Starmer has just tweeted 15 minutes ago. He says, "I know you're angry about immigration. I get it. We will smash the people smuggling gangs at source." Maybe I'll just read it all in his accent, shall I?
There is no return to freedom of movement. We have left the EU. I do not accept that prevents us working with other police units here, with prosecutors here, to smash the gangs.
Well, I'm sure the smuggling gangs are absolutely quaking in their boots now. Keir Starmer's on their case. Solving this issue, smashing the gangs, is that the impossible dream, Tom?
It really seems beyond him at the minute, I have to say.
We're going to get the evil people smugglers and we're going to smash them and we're going to put them in jail. That will solve the migrant crisis. Prime Minister Keir Starmer's promise to smash the gangs has resulted in just 5 convictions. Hurrah for operating small boats.
So what he really wants to say is that this policy of smashing the gangs is a total and utter disaster. There isn't a cat in hell's chance that it's going to work. You just can't say it.
It's crap. That's what he's basically saying.
I know you're angry about immigration. I get it. Mark my words, I will take back control of our borders. That means cutting migration, ending the use of asylum hotels and ramping up our efforts to stop small boat crossings.
It's like a parallel universe, the real world, as told by the impressive David Bolt, and Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves' fantasy world.
We will smash the people smuggling gangs at source.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 3 minutes past 6. I'm Mike Graham. It is, of course, Monday the 8th of September. And my goodness me, doesn't time fly? You know, just when you thought you'd only just started phase 2 of a government, suddenly along comes Friday, resignation of Angela Rayner, a ridiculously over-emphasised cabinet reshuffle. Let's just remember precisely what happened around about, this time last week?
Summer's definitely over, and this morning we've got all the number 10 staff together and talk through what phase 2 of the government is going to look like and feel like. So we go into phase 2, 1st of September 2025, in good spirits, confident and with conviction.
Less than 5 days. 5 days later they were in chaos and they were all walking around with long faces as though somebody had died. Angela Rayner finally threw herself at the mercy of the country and decided to resign, not only as the Secretary of State for Housing, Communities and Levelling Up, but she also resigned as Deputy Prime Minister, and she's also resigned as Deputy Leader of the Labour Party. So Labour have now got a mammoth task in front of them. Shabana Mahmood has been moved from Justice into the Home Office, right? And apparently she's just discovered that there's a real problem with migration. Illegal boats, loads of people coming over, 1,000 plus came over on Saturday, her first day in the job. So guess what she's going to do today? She's going to have some meetings with some colleagues to find out what the best way to stop the boats is. What have they been doing for the last year and a bit? Surely they've had loads of meetings about what to do to stop the boats. Why does she have to have new meetings to find out how to stop the boats? Meanwhile, David Lammy has gone into her old job in Justice. He must have done such a great job as Foreign Secretary that they've decided to get him out of the way and give that job to Yvette Cooper, who, of course, up until relatively recently, was going to give us regular updates on how many people were being returned to France after having come here illegally. I'll give you a clue. It's not 1, it's not 2, It's not 3. That's right. It's absolutely 0. None at all. Turns out 30,000 people have now come in, and that's just this year alone. 03444991000. Rafe Harlemagne-Koo is here. Very good morning to you, Rafe. We're going to walk through the various different stories on the front page this morning on the Daily Telegraph. Unions threaten Prime Minister over Rayner's laws. This is over workers' rights, of course. Today, of course, is the second day of a tube strike in London, which will completely paralyse the capital city. Apparently, they don't like working for £75,000 for a 4-day week. They want some better conditions. Prime Minister to ask Blairites to task them with new cabinet, new growth is what he wants. Starmer wants reforms on building and welfare, and also net zero regulation may well be in the firing line. The I-paper says migrant hotel closures to be fast-tracked as Starmer faces Labour unrest. Apparently he's pushing ministers to accelerate the closure of asylum hotels amid warnings from Red Wall Labour MPs that the government needs a tougher approach. And they're supposedly going to have another crackdown on welfare under Pat McFadden, who's got the new work and pensions job. Meanwhile, Prince Harry's back in town, and there's another judge on the front page of The Sun who apparently offered his best wishes to a 7-7 jihadi who's about to be released from prison. Isn't it marvellous? And it makes you glad to be alive, doesn't it? Rafe, a very good morning to you. There was a big moon last night, which actually woke me up. It was that bright, and I wondered if there was some kind of, celestial light shining upon us, which was going to give us some kind of new way out of this horrendous government we've got.
I think probably they needed that to put the bat signal. We need Batman right now to help us out of this crisis, I think.
It's true.
We've tried everything else.
Well, we tried the emergency signal, but that didn't work either.
Yeah, 3 p.m. yesterday, we were all supposed to have this emergency alert for the national emergency test, and 4 o'clock, I thought, when is this thing coming through? I didn't realise. I never got it. I don't think you got it either.
I didn't get it, no.
I mean, you can understand if you're in Japan and there's a tsunami arriving. When you're in central London, I'm not pretty sure what the emergency will be. Or there'll probably be gangs of youth running towards me or something.
Maybe they can play the next time a tube train actually runs. And they could go, if you want to catch the 10:09 from, Tottenham Court Road on the Central Line, here's an alert for you, because otherwise you won't see one. It is ridiculous, isn't it? What should we start with? Should we start with migrants and Shabana Mahmood? Because it seems to be ridiculous that they've almost, they talk about resetting government. My sort of explanation for everything on Friday was that I predicted that Angela Rayner would resign probably around about midday, which is pretty much exactly what she did. But then they obviously went into panic mode and thought, hang on a minute, if we don't do something else, all the papers will be full of is Angela Rayner's misdeeds and the more detail about exactly what she did and when she did it and what she knew. Like, for example, the upping or the inflating of the house price that she has in Ashton-under-Lyne so that she can get more money out of it to put down on another flat. So instead, they come up with this sort of meaningless, pointless reshuffle, moving, chess pieces around on a board. For what reason?
Well, I think deck chairs on the Titanic is actually what they were trying to rearrange. I mean, there was, what else could he do at that moment? He needed to try to get the news agenda changed. You're quite right.
Yeah.
So we got these meaningless changes around. At this rate, we're going to be at phase 30 by Christmas. I think the way things are going.
Yeah. It's a bit like watching a rugby union international, isn't it? When they're going on 15th phase of ball now, and we're not actually making any progress. We're just going across a sort of a horizontal straight line.
But it's so absurd to see Shabana Mahmood now talking about having discussions about what to do about the boats.
Right.
They spent all those years in opposition saying, we have the plan, smash the gangs, we know exactly what to do. They've been in government for ages now, and we were told that they were on top of everything.
Yeah.
New deals with France and so forth. So why is there now this urgent need to look into this once again?
Yeah.
Because obviously, as we said from the outset, they haven't got a clue how to stop the boats.
They haven't, of course not. But they've been working on it now for more than a year. Let's see what Yvette Cooper's last statement was when she was Home Secretary.
We'll provide regular updates for the public at every stage. That's why I'm confirming today that the pilot has now started and the first migrants who arrived on the small boat are now in detention. The transfers to immigration removal centres are underway as we speak, so we won't provide operational details at this point that criminal gangs can simply use and exploit.
Yeah, that was from the 7th of August, right? Since then, there have been precisely no updates. No one has been returned, no one has been deported, no one has gone back to France. And the only updates we've now got from Yvette Cooper is that she's not doing the job anymore.
Well, they're calling it irregular migration, so we're getting irregular updates.
Irregular updates, Well, as I always say, it was actually pointed out to me that Halley's Comet actually comes around on a regular basis, just not very often.
Yeah.
So it might be that's what she meant.
Once every 76
years, exactly. Yeah. No, she's been putting tweets out since the beginning of August 7th, and now she's got her sort of timeline is full of people wishing her congratulations, from Anthony Tajani, who I think is the Italian foreign minister, Andrea Schibbel, Ministry of Foreign Affairs for Ukraine, all congratulating her for getting a great job. She hasn't actually done anything yet.
Well, she hasn't done anything in any of the roles she's ever had.
No.
It's one of those people that you think, why on earth are they still here? We thought we saw the last of her under Tony Blair, and she still manages to pop back up again. You know, it was her husband, Ed Balls. You said that you predicted Angela Rayner was going to resign.
Yeah.
You know, he has a podcast with George Osborne, and why anybody would want to listen to them? I mean, even more boring than watching Rory Stewart and Alistair Campbell. But they came out, we predict, George Osborne, Ed Balls, we predict Angela Rayner will not resign.
Of course.
Next day, she resigned.
This is the thing. I mean, I was up at the Reform Conference at the weekend, and I was saying to people, these so-called, you know, political big beasts, you know, these people who have been in high levels of government, they supposedly know their way around Whitehall, Westminster, they get everything wrong. You know,
exactly.
Because they have no clue what's going on outside their little bubble world.
They have no clue, no instinct. And also, Yvette Cooper's going to be in hot water now with the Americans, because now things are emerging about what she said about Donald Trump in his first run for president.
Yes.
And, of course, Lammy had to tread those waters very delicately.
He did.
And now, just before a state visit from Trump, we have Yvette Cooper now having to obviously make amends for what she said in the past.
Well, I think we should have a little run through some of these new appointments. Let's have a look at David Lammy, because he's now in the Ministry of Justice, which means that he'll have a bit more to do with policing the streets of this country.
If it feels like neighbourhood policing has vanished, it's not around you. We haven't seen a police while I've been here, and I've been here for a little while now.
You can't make this stuff up, can you? There he is, going on about you don't see any police, and there's one literally standing behind him.
I don't know what's better, this one or his mastermind appearance. It's like there's a shuffle of riches here. Which
this is the thing. And I mean, the great thing about the mastermind appearance was that the only questions that he didn't get wrong were the ones that he passed on. You know,
one of which was the answer was pass. Probably,
absolutely right. Let's have a look at what some of our other, you know, esteemed pundits in the same business as us have to say. This is Andrew Marr on Question Time, the first Question Time I think after the election win last year.
I think just having a stable government that will be there for 5, maybe 10 years, who knows, but with sort of ordinary, down-to-earth, serious people talking like the rest of us in charge of the government, and a plan that doesn't shift very much for investment, is going to mean a wall of money coming into this country from around the world. You look at the chaos going on in the continent, particularly in France. You look at the chaos likely ahead in the United States. And suddenly, for once, for the first time in many of our lives, actually Britain looks like a little haven of peace and stability.
That's brilliant, isn't it? So where is this wall of money? There's a wall of money going out of the country, isn't there?
It's the cringe factor of all these people now. Anna Soubry as well, all looking forward to the new Red Dawn under Labour, and has come back to bite them royally. I mean, it just goes to show you that these people are yesterday's people. They have no clue
and
about
there's no
where
point
the British...
listening to them.
No, there's no point, they're useless.
No point in listening to them. One piece of good news, however, it's on page 4 of The Sun. Scores of overseas aid projects costing taxpayers tens of millions have finally been axed, according to ministers who are going to announce it today. Department of Foreign Affairs has begun culling programmes, right? Now, you might be worried about this because one of the first programmes that's going to be killed is a £3.9 million scheme to boost climate resilience and low-carbon development in Iraq.
Well, I'm so pleased about that, because that's the one thing, when you ask Iraqis what their key priorities in life are, it's not basically safety or putting a meal on my table, but there's also a £95 million initiative to boost welfare in Jordan. And the best thing of all is a £120 million pledge to support Pakistani government improving education. I mean, for heaven's sake, we are no longer a charity. We have to stop this. We have to look after our own people, and it seems quite fair that when we're trying to increase defence spending, we take money away from these ridiculous projects like this. I'm just glad. I don't think we're funding the Indian space project any longer.
No.
I think that's gone.
Thank goodness for that. You know, now we're offering people in India the chance to come and work in Britain and pay slightly lower national insurance contributions than the rest of us, which which of course they think is going to suddenly boost our economy. What it's not going to do is help Britain's economy, but it may well help India's economy. Let's go back to Shabana Mahmood, though, because in the front page of the Sun and many other papers, 1,097 migrants in one day came on small boats on Saturday alone. Her first official day in the job. The Sun have got as part of their broken borders scenario. Good luck with the new job, Shabana, and they're spread on pages 8 and 9. Where we've also got a Romanian people smuggler who apparently tried to dodge being booted out of Britain by claiming he was in talks to play for Manchester City. You can't make it up, honestly. It just gets funnier by the day.
If you don't laugh, you cry, so you have to laugh, right, for comic relief. But it is absolutely insane. And look, how many years... It's one thing if this was a new phenomenon that just happened this summer.
Yeah.
This is every single summer this happens.
Yeah.
You just despair. You know, you were at the Reform Conference, at least there you got decent policies out now.
Yeah.
On migration, and what's amazing is to see how quickly now Labour are trying to park their tanks on Reform's lawn. They're now talking about using military camps. They won't use the word camp, though, because apparently camp is reminiscent of concentration camps.
Oh, right, so we can't be having
tell
that.
Tell that to the people who are going to Butlins holiday camp every year.
Right, exactly, Pontins. Yeah.
But,
well, this is it. The front page of the I paper, they've got migrant hotel closures to be fast-tracked as Starmer faces Labour unrest. Well, it's all very well fast-tracking the closure of hotels, but they actually fought a legal battle to keep the Epping Bell Hotel open, despite the fact that the locals, and I met some of the locals, and I met a lot of amazing people up at Reform Conference this week, all of whom watch Talk, all of whom love Morning Glory and all the other shows, and they say, look, without you guys, we wouldn't have anything to listen to, you know. And they were talking about in Epping, you know, we're not going to stop. We are not going to stop until they close the Bell Hotel down and move the people out of there, because let's face it, the guy who was convicted of a sex assault on a 14-year-old girl was finally put in prison last week. But who knows who else is in there?
Yeah, you're quite right. And you think Labour is on a suicide mission, choosing to appeal the decision of the court regarding the hotel, because they know that the British public were overjoyed when that court ruling came in to close down the Epping Hotel. And then for the government to try to appeal it, just, I mean...
Makes no sense, does it?
Makes no sense at all. Of course, the bigger issue is, once they leave the hotels, where do they go?
Exactly.
It's only 1/3 of the migrants are actually in hotels. 2/3 are already in these HMOs, houses of multiple occupation. Something like over 70,000 are in HMOs, rather than 30,000 in hotels. And, you know, it's one thing to have all these migrants in a golf course hotel somewhere, but when they're next door to you, when they're across from your daughter's primary school, that's a bigger issue. That's why the idea of camps is so good. I've been talking about this consistently for over 5 years. We need to use camps. When I was raising this, it was beyond the pale. I was extreme for talking about this.
Absolutely.
Now the Labour Party have finally gotten around. Look, after the Second World War, as I said before, there were 250,000 Polish people in this country. Men, women, children, the elderly. They were housed in Polish resettlement camps. For 10, 15 years. My mother's cousins lived in there for years. They fell in love and they got married in these camps. They weren't complaining. They were happy.
They were happy,
1940s levels conditions for children and women were fine. Why on earth, and now in the 21st century with all our high-tech stuff, are we not having young men of fighting age in these camps?
Same goes for 1956 when the uprising happened in Hungary, when the Russians rolled their tanks in, and loads of Hungarians that I later got to know came and lived in the same kind of settlement camps and worked until they could get work. We're very happy to live there for 5, 6, 7 years.
And for heaven's sake, our young men, our British Armed Forces, they live in camps and barracks. If it's good enough for men of fighting age who are British, why on earth can't these chaps, particularly given that they've come from living conditions which are far harsher than anything we've ever encountered.
I know, absolutely extraordinary stuff. We've got so much to talk about this morning. There's loads of stories in there. Emily Thornberry raising her what you might call ugly crown, trying to get towards becoming the deputy leader of the Labour Party, which is also going to be very, as you can imagine, sort of, I don't know, very unseemly fight between various members and factions of Labour. It's page 8 of the Daily Mail. Dame Emily Thornberry yesterday threw her hat into the ring in what is expected to be a bitter battle to replace Angela Rayner as deputy leader. I mean, and also, you know who the other front runner is for this? Is Louise Haigh. you know, the former convicted fraudster who had to resign as Secretary of State for Transport. She was the first sort of domino to fall back in, I think it was September of last year, about a year ago.
Well, I can't think anyone better to step into Angela Rayner's shoes, can you?
That's a very good point, actually. We'll come back to Rayner as well, because she's going to get another payoff for quitting. Let's have a look at what the BBC did when they wanted to play out the emergency alert from yesterday.
And the idea is there's going to be a 10-second siren sound, and your phone is going to vibrate. 2 seconds.
Oh, right. We are right on 3 o'clock. I've got no alerts. My phone's not vibrating.
We're running late.
And I'm not on either of my phones. There you go.
So it should be that phones that are connected to the 4G or 5G network should go off any time now.
It's not just me, is it? It's not
well,
just...
it's not going off on my phone either. This could turn out to be some classic television here.
Yeah, I wouldn't say classic exactly, I'd just say dopey. The trouble is, of course, she's now outed herself as a BBC presenter with a burner phone. Why has she got a burner phone? Well, she's running some kind of Breaking Bad operation at home.
Kasha's an old friend of mine. So
all right, you don't have to make fun of her then. But she shouldn't have admitted she's got a burner phone. I think there's another one here. Let's check this out.
2 out of 3 for us.
Well, look, maybe it's the phone, but I know now, I bet it's going to go off when we're doing something. And there you go. This is why we don't bring phones into the studio.
Amazing.
Well, I presume that's not the national emergency tone.
No, I don't want it. You never know, though, do you? Yeah, it was come up. It was done on David Lammy idea. 21 minutes past 6. Ray Parliamancu is here. This is Morning Glory.
How realistic do you think a ceasefire is this week?
There's a very good chance that we'll have a settlement, an agreement of some kind.
We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing.
What are you looking for here?
An end. A real end.
Well, all of a sudden he's a big shot because he has the U.S. on his side.
I am very disappointed with President Putin. He'll talk so beautifully and then he'll bomb people at night.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 6:25 coming up. We've got Rafe Huddlemanku here with us. We've got lots of stories to go through. Pictures as well of Keir Starmer up in Balmoral at the weekend, walking hand in hand with who they describe as Lady Star, who of course is his wife. He's holding her hand though, which I always find is a bit weird for people of his age. But anyway, never mind. Let's get a voice note from Steve.
Steve from Barnsley. Morning, Mike. Another eventful weekend with the Labour government, as per usual. And on the medical fronts, I know we've got quite far in being able to replace organs in people's bodies when there's failing organs. Is there any chance a spine could be replaced for this Labour government? Because they are spineless.
They certainly are spineless, but I don't think you're ever going to get anything other than spineless out of Keir Starmer. I mean, the question is, how long does he survive? A lot of people writing at the weekend, Rafe, about how, you know, this is now kind of the beginning of the end for Keir Starmer, because he's lost so many different cabinet members, many of them these women that he was putting in place, and he's basically left with this kind of hollowed-out version of the original Mark I Labour government, and the best he's got is now Rachel Reeves.
Yes, and he's now lurched to the right, bringing back Blairites, the people that we want to see the least of, have been brought back into the fold to try to essentially stop people going over to reform. But of course, that's just going to alienate much more of the backbenchers who already feel emboldened and who've already challenged the government in the past. And so now he's
we mentioned Louise Haigh, you know, the woman who was Secretary of State for Transport, had to leave because it turned out she kept reporting phones being stolen, even though they weren't always being stolen. And in fact, one case she actually reported the phone being stolen from the phone that she said had been stolen. So she's not exactly a master criminal, but she had to leave because of a sort of a fraud conviction. But she apparently was quite key as one of the leaders of the revolt against the welfare bill. So she's quite powerful on the left in the backbenches.
Well, this competition now to replace Angela Rayner as what's the role? Leader of the what do they call it? Her role, which is elected
deputy leader.
Deputy leader of the party. I mean, this is basically the far left's only guaranteed way to keep the feet of the Prime Minister to the fire, and it's going to be an absolute car crash watching this happen now, because also you have to remember Starmer has essentially taken control of the economy as well. He's basically brought into number 10 all of these economic advisors. So if anything goes wrong with the economy, he won't be able to blame Rachel Reeves now as much as he could.
Well, he's
now responsible.
Yeah, he's even hired Darren Jones, who was her kind of second in command at the Treasury, to become his kind of chief secretary, if you like, to the Prime Minister. Here's what he had to say about the reshuffle. I think he's about to say it anyway. We're going to get it shortly. Are we going to get it? No? Any chance? Yes? No? Maybe? All right, we'll come back. Meanwhile, Angela Rayner's getting £17,000, apparently, as a payoff, because this is what happens. If you're a cabinet minister, you get a sort of proportionate, they say, you know, basic redundancy payment, effectively. Funnily enough, though, she, only a few months ago, was saying they should do away with these.
Yes, well, let's see. I mean, if she is going to try to, restore her reputation, she needs to give back the 17,000 or refuse to have it at all. Because, in the past, she said, if you are under investigation, you cannot take this money. Right. There's also a pension boost that also comes when you depart like this. So we'll have to wait and see what she does with it.
Yeah. Well, my guess would be she'll take it, because she'll put it towards the 40 grand that she's got to pay. And I presume at the weekend...
there,
yeah, presumably at the weekend, I had this vision of her sort of stomping her bother boots on the pavement outside Admiralty Arch as they take away all of the stuff that was hers from that Grace and Favour flat that she no longer has access to.
And trying to squeeze it all into that little place in Hove.
Right. So does that mean that if he's deputy Prime Minister, David Lammy gets the Admiralty Arch gaff?
Yes, absolutely. It goes, there's the Grace and Favour apartments that come with the
lucky old him. Lucky old him.
Yvette Cooper gets Chevening. So yes, they all move. It's all basically everyone's moving around.
Happy Socialism Day. How many Grace and Favour mansions can you occupy? Let's have a look. I think we've got Darren Jones now. Let's see it.
but also with our relationships with allies and others around the world. And likewise, Shabana Mahmood, who was the Justice Secretary, who came in and really got a grip of the prisons crisis that we'd inherited. You remember the prisons were full, the justice system had come to a complete standstill. Shabana was able to grip that really difficult issue, to fix it and to get the reforms in to train. We know that she's now going to apply that reforming zeal to tackling issues, for example, on small boats, which of course the public want to see us be able to stop.
Yeah, what an absolute crock of nonsense. How has she solved the prisons crisis? She let 26,000 people out of prison.
I was just going to say, got a grip on it. If that's a grip, I hate to see if you lost control.
I mean, they let 26,000 people out of prison, right? And the prisons are still full.
Yeah, and we've got all those foreigners in our prisons who should have been deported back to where they came from. I mentioned this, you know, we talked up at the Reform Conference about, you know, lawless Britain and why there's a problem. And one of the problems is you can't send anyone to prison. And one of the reasons for that is there's 12,000 foreign prisoners in there who should be being deported. And here's a novel idea. How about you stop, you release all those pensioners and carers who tweeted things perhaps they shouldn't have tweeted.
That would make some room.
You know, and you don't send 5 people to arrest people like Graham Linehan for tweeting whatever they did, right? Rather than releasing domestic abusers, perhaps you should release those people.
That might be better. Front page of the Telegraph, on the second day of a tube strike here in London, the unions are now threatening the Prime Minister as well. They're going to fight for Angela Rayner's workers' rights bill, which he's threatening to sort of water down, and you were alluding to this earlier, that there's going to be this battle now between the left and the right of the party as to how they go forward.
Yeah, this is going to be a huge thing, because we've got the British Retail Consortium, the Federation of Small Business, all saying, look, if you want to go for growth, and that is the government's new task now, right?
Yeah.
They've brought in all these new Labour types to go for growth. You can't go for growth if you're putting billions of pounds a year of red tape and benefits for employers under Angela Rayner's far-left socialist employment rights bill.
No.
So this is going to come to it's going to come to a crescendo at some point.
It's going to come to a sticky end, isn't it? Because it says here it's going to cost companies likely £5 billion a year, extra red tape and rules that will make it harder for people to be sacked. Which is never a good thing for private business, is it? Because the more rights you give to workers, the more ridiculous. It's not as if we live in Dickensian Britain. It's not like workers don't have any rights. But this means that as soon as you work your first day at a job, you then have all the rights that you would normally have after a period of probation.
It's an appalling piece of legislation, and anybody in their right mind can see how this is basically helping our stagnant economy become even more stagnant.
Yeah.
He's got rid of not only Angela Rayner, but he's also got rid of Justin Madders, who was the Minister for Employment, who actually helped to get that through Parliament. So it does seem to the left as if he wants to change things, and that's why I think this election for deputy leader, they're going to make this one of the main issues that they discuss to try to ensure that this does stay in. And if it does, it will be disastrous for the Labour manifesto pledges to go for growth.
So, I mean, literally on all sides, the Prime Minister is being assailed. You know, assailed from the right, assailed from the left, assailed from the middle, assailed from the Blairites, assailed from the rump of the party, assailed by the unions. You know, he's got nowhere to go.
He's not in a happy place. So whether or not we get a general election in 2027, as Nigel Farage forecasted at the conference, we don't know. But whether Starmer will be leading the party into the general election, I think looks increasingly unlikely.
Yeah, it really does. This one from Margaret in Birmingham says, "Morning, Mike. Message to memo to Shabana Mahmood. 1,097 invaders in 17 boats across the channel. No talks, no meetings, no gimmicks. Just stop the bloody boats. Find a deterrent." Well, that would be good. Morning, Mike and Rafe, says Julian. Roll up. It's bonanza time for the people smugglers. Labour are having a 4-year-long closing down sale before the tough new boss Farage slams the gates firmly shut. And you can see that, can't you? Every time Labour say something that they're about to do, the number of people coming on the boats increases, you know, because none of the things that they're offering is a deterrent in any way.
Well, that's it. You need to have a deterrent. Look, I thought there were much better solutions to the Rwanda plan, but the Rwanda plan was at least a deterrent of some sort and some variety. And we saw what happened. As soon as the Rwanda plan came in, literally within that week, migrants began going to the Republic of Ireland, fleeing there from the UK.
Right.
These things do work. If you have one of these one-in, one-out policy where only 50 people a week are going, you just had 1,000 people come over in one day.
And none out.
You know, it's like buying a lottery ticket.
It's 1,000 in, none out. That's the new rule. Absolutely extraordinary. It's coming up to 6:33. How about this from James? Another 4 years. What fun, Mike. When I was reading about the cabinet reshuffle, it made me think of a summer job I had on a pheasant farm. We said a peasant farm there for a minute. When I was 17, my main duty was shoveling manure from one side of the yard to the other. It's a very good analogy. I like that. Let's get a voice note from Lee.
Lee from Chelmsford. Reset number 3 underway. All he's managed to do is move around a load of failed politicians. We've got David Lammy, who don't know the difference between Red Leicester and Stilton. We've got Jonathan Reynolds, a fake solicitor. He's got to move. And Yvette Cooper and Angela Eagles. Instead of a reset, Mike, we need a general election. All the best.
Yeah, Lee, I think you're absolutely right. That is definitely what we need. I'll tell you what we don't need, and we'll talk about this in a minute, is old Prince Harry back in Britain. Apparently he's come home to do something or other. I'm not quite sure. Rafe will fill us in shortly on that. But apparently he wants to bring his family back to Britain now, even though last time he was here, he said it was too dangerous. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 6:37. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock. Of course, Rafe Heidelmann-Koo is here. I've just been checking out Keir Starmer's Twitter account, Rafe, and it might not surprise you to know that he has not tweeted anything at all about Angela Rayner's resignation or indeed the reshuffle and the new appointments of his sparkling new team. But what he has tweeted yesterday was tens of millions of phones successfully sounded across the country during today's emergency alert test. This is an important step in keeping people safe during national emergencies. Well, I haven't actually heard from anyone yet who got it. I haven't spoken to anyone who got it, so I have to ask the audience. If you did get this emergency alert text, by all means let me know. And did it work? Because certainly we just watched the BBC guys not getting it. You didn't get it, I didn't get it. Oh, here it is. Kevin, a bit better late than never. So yeah, just but why tweet about something like that?
Well, it's
a great success.
He tweets about everything all the time. The fact that he hasn't basically tweeted anything about the reshuffle or Angela Rayner speaks volumes. Speaking of tweets, I actually put out a poll on Saturday on my Twitter feed asking who is the worst Prime Minister we've ever had. And Keir Starmer won that.
It's a no-brainer.
Now, my followers, of course, aren't necessarily the most non-partisan, but I think Talk's viewers and my followers are probably pretty much the same. 74. I had 9,000 people reply to my poll. 74% said Keir Starmer, 19% said Tony Blair, 5% Boris Johnson, 3% Liz Truss. So by a huge margin, Keir Starmer is the most loathed politician we've ever had, apparently.
Well, I was speaking, I think it was on Friday, to Anthony Selden, you know, the historian of Number 10 itself, and who's not, shall we say, exactly completely, unpartisan, because he's very much a bit of a Blairite, likes to talk about Labour a lot. But even he had to concede that Keir Starmer has probably had the worst year of any Prime Minister that he could ever remember. You know. And that's being generous.
And this was after we were reassured that the serious people are back in charge.
Yes, the grown-ups.
The grown-ups are there.
By the way, I forgot to mention this story to you earlier. It's in the Times. And this is all about Angela Rayner's boyfriend, one Sam Tarry, who I think is the guy who's on the other end of the dinghy when they were photographed, you know, in the Channel the other day. A solar power client of the lobbying firm employing Angela Rayner's partner has been lauded by Sir Keir Starmer and greenlit for major projects. He's also apparently moved into the music business, where he's about to advise Universal Music on the best way to deal with the government on AI. Right, so this is a guy who's embedded himself literally in the government, not just with Angela Rayner, but with everybody else. Apparently, Island Green Power secured a one-on-one meeting with Michael Shanks, the Renewables Minister, this year, and there's won approval from Ed Billamad, the Energy Secretary, for 2 big solar projects, and it was all organised by this guy Tarry.
Well, I think questions need to be asked.
Yeah.
I mean, they were so intense in their scrutiny about the PPE scandal with the Tory government and who was having conversations with whom and what the contacts were. You know, jobs for mates.
Yeah,
I think,
this is a guy who's a former MP himself, former Labour MP, who I think who had to resign because of some scandal or other, and he's now working as an advisor to a lobbying company called Henham Strategy, and these are the sort of people that get you contact with government ministers, get you contracts with government ministers, and he's going to be given, so if you get Sam Tarry on board, he's going to not only get you next to Ed Miliband, but he's probably going to get you some government money.
Well, I think questions need to be asked. That's the job of the Tory party in opposition. I hope they're going to hold them to account just as much as they were held to account by Labour.
Well,
it's the hypocrisy here. That's the thing, you know. Everyone claims to be holier than thou, and they all seem to be up to the same things.
Exactly right. This from Mark Kevin Shropshire. He says, Mike, I didn't hear the emergency alarm. However, I set an alarm for 2:50 p.m, turned off my phone. Also, prior to that, I disabled the emergency alarm in my settings. Coupled with the failings of anything this government does, I was definitely not going to hear that sound. Anne in Hull says she got it. And you're the first person, well done, congratulations, we have a prize for that, but we haven't. Front page of the Times, how about this? 2 GP surgeries are shutting every single week. I was watching John Healey yesterday on Laura Kunsberg's show, the Defence Secretary, who hasn't been moved, seems to be able to keep his job. And one of the things that he said that was a great achievement is they keep spouting this ridiculous nonsense. 4 million new appointments in the NHS. Yeah, except everybody knows you can't get an appointment. They can make you an appointment and then they cancel it.
Yeah,
and then they claim that as an extra appointment. But this is far more, I would say, damaging to Wes Streeting. Basically saying that, you know, so many practices are having to shut down because they can't make any money because of the way that the business works. It's hopeless.
Yeah, 1,000 GP practices have closed since 2018. We've all had this experience now of things getting much worse. It's not just because of population increase, it's also because the number of GP practices are literally falling.
Right.
But as we're closing down so many GP practices, there are now 5 million more registered patients than there were, and GP numbers are down by more than 600. So each family doctor, if you're wondering, in 2018 they were responsible for 2,000 people. Now they're responsible for more than 2,250 people each.
Yeah. And, you know, it's a law of just inverse squares, isn't it? You can't just keep increasing a number and expect everything to stay the same. It's like putting 1 million more cars on the road, which is pretty much what we've done, and people wonder why there's more traffic jams.
And we know how people going to medical school can't then find placements as well. This is a huge issue.
Yeah, absolutely right. Lots of people saying they did get the emergency alert. This one from Sean in Norfolk. Good morning, Mike. On the emergency alert, I just turned off the setting on my phone. I was in a boozer yesterday and only a few went off. Plus, there are more important things to sort out in the UK. Well, again, what a ridiculous thing for the Prime Minister to put a message out about. You know, millions of people's phones went off yesterday. What a great triumph for the government, you know.
Warning for that tsunami Or that earthquake for which we are so famous.
Yeah, exactly right. Let's talk about Prince Harry, shall we? He's on some of the front pages today, and obviously he's back in the country. I'm not quite sure why he's back in the country, but perhaps you can tell me.
Well, this is essentially Prince Harry trying to get a more positive reception in the UK. So he's been over here recently, but always in a negative scenario.
Yeah.
Coming from, taking his father's government to court, completely unprecedented in royal history.
Yeah.
Now he's coming over for 4 days as a de facto sort of pseudo-royal tour, whereby he'll be going to visit all of the charities that he's patron of over the next 4 days. So today he's going to the World Child Awards in London, which supports kids with serious illness. He's been patron of that for around 17 years. And then he's got other things coming up.
Well, now he doesn't have his charity in Africa anymore.
No, but he's got the Invictus Games, the Diana Award, so he's coming for all of that. The big question, of course, is will he meet with his father?
Yes.
Of course, as you've just been saying, His Majesty is in Scotland at the moment. The King may come down to London for some engagements, but there's been nothing in the diary.
There's nothing
meeting.
in the diary. And also, is it not the case that it's the 3rd anniversary of the Queen, his grandmother's death, which Prince William, I think, is attending something about this week as well?
That's
which,
right.
Which he's not involved in.
Well, that's today. So today he's off to Sunningdale, the Prince of Wales, for a ceremony to mark 3 years since Her late Majesty's death. And in fact, Prince William is busy every single day, conveniently, of Prince Harry's
haven't
visits.
got any time in my schedule to
There's
see
no
it.
time here. And Prince Harry's team says, well, look, this is Harry making himself available. He wants to heal the wounds. Well, nice to say that, but it's not that easy to basically restore trust after everything that he's put the royal family through.
Yeah, you can't just go, I'm ready to heal the wounds now after actually making the wounds.
After I stabbed you.
After I stabbed you, I'm ready now to take to hospital to save your life. I mean, it's ridiculous. Wasn't he also speaking at the weekend in some way, shape or form about how he now would like to bring his family back to Britain? Even though he's previously said it's too dangerous for them to come here.
So he's come over solo this time, saying he's prepared to endure the risk of coming over here.
I mean, seriously.
It's like this is war-torn Somalia or something.
Yeah.
But he won't put his family through all of that. Look, we know, as long as he gives 28 days' notice to the government, they will review his visit and he will receive the necessary level of security that's required.
But he always gets that anyway. I mean, the point is, if he comes on a visit like this, he will have security, as a matter of course, because he's a foreign, considered to be a foreign dignitary now. So it's absolute nonsense, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it's complete nonsense. And I think, let him, he's made his bed, unfortunately. He has to understand that, there are consequences for all of his actions.
Yes, quite. Let's talk about the Chief of the Metropolitan Police, Sir Mark Rowley, because there was a load of arrests at the weekend, one of those Palestine Action protests. I think it was 850 arrests, which will no doubt put more pressure on the old coffers of Metropolitan Police. But this is sort of following on from not only the appointment of Shabana Mahmood, but also, as you said, of the Graham Linehan situation from last week. He's basically saying police officers should not be required to record or investigate complaints when there is no evidence the suspect intended real-world harm. Well, welcome to the real world, Sir Mark.
Yes, I mean, this is as if they've just realised that, now. We've been saying this for years. It's obvious. You've got the entire world looking upon Britain with, open mouths and disbelief. But, as I said a couple of days ago, I think the Graham Linehan arrest was the straw that broke the camel's back.
Totally.
Because you even had, champions of cancel culture like Owen Jones saying this was a step too far.
Yeah.
Everyone could see this for what it is. I'm sorry, I don't buy this idea that the police are not able to use common sense now because of legislation.
No.
We know full well they didn't arrest Jo Brand when she said she wanted to throw acid on Nigel Farage. There have been so many cases. We had a Lib Dem politician get essentially put up a picture of a person with a gun shooting a turf. Nothing happened over that.
No.
There's clear selective two-tier policing in play here. I'm glad that he's speaking up and wants to actually change the legislation now, I think, having been embarrassed to this degree. But please, come on, the police should have common sense.
And surely, when he says he wants greater discretion for officers, surely he can grant that discretion as the head of the Metropolitan Police.
And the discretion might be, maybe we don't need to have 5 armed police to go and arrest somebody.
Yes.
When, of course, if something happens to your car or your phone or your house, nobody will show up.
Well, do you know, again, up at the Reform conference, I was doing a panel discussion about, you know, the lawless state of our streets. And as I was walking out of the conference centre in the morning, ran into a couple of people who were obviously coming in. And there were so many people who were having loads of selfies, been saying people were really happy to see us. And this couple said, yeah, well, we're glad that you're going to talk about lawless Britain because we've just had our car stolen. And I went, from where? And they went, that hotel car park over there. As apparently Birmingham is one of the worst places to have a car. As I was talking to a couple of security guys, and they were like, yeah, people get their cars nicked all the time in Birmingham. It's like literally like sort of national pastime.
And when you look at the number of police hours per year spent policing tweets, dealing with on-site stuff, look, you know, police the streets, not the tweets.
Yeah, it's a pretty simple message. In fact, you can even make that into a slogan, Rafe. Perhaps, you know, run for office. Here's one that worries me slightly, and I don't know if I'm taking this the wrong way, as it were, but prostate cancer testing is being carried out in church halls by charities amid concerns that the NHS does not offer enough checks. And it turns out that something like 215,000 individuals, obviously men, have actually been tested more than 350,000 times. I'm not sure that this is something that we should be proud of, is it?
Well, I think getting your prostate checked out is something you should be doing. I think that's a big issue.
Not by some random character wandering the streets going, come over here and I'm coming to this church and I'll test your prostate. And you're kind of going, sorry?
With a big smile on his face.
You know, it brings me back to the old Who movie, Tommy, you know, with Uncle Ernie and Keith Moon with his rubber gloves. You just kind of go, crikey. I don't think so, mate. Not on this occasion. Anyway, sorry, maybe I'm just barking up the wrong tree.
No, I was just trying to get more... I didn't read the article before, so I was just...
Well, have a read of it, and I'll come back to get your view on it in a moment. Let's get a voice note from Belinda.
Morning, Mike. Belinda here. Glad to see you back. Morning, Rafe, also. Just a question about the severance pay that MPs get when they leave the job. How much is that, and should Angela Rayner be getting this? And also, why is she even being given the privilege of now even being a backbench MP? I don't think she should even be an MP at all now. I think that's it. Kaput. Bye-bye.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you've done so many things wrong that you've had to resign your cabinet position, at the very least you should have a by-election, I think, to see whether or not the people in your constituency still want you to represent them.
Well, it's the old idea of recall, isn't it? Yeah. Because being an elected representative is very different to being a member of the government.
Sure.
So you're a member of parliament,
yes,
member of government. Those are two different roles. You were elected with a mandate, and there has been, of course, discussion about this idea. If you can get enough people within your constituency to sign a petition, and if you can reach a magic number, then they should be forced to by-election.
Right. I think I think you could also insert a clause into that, which would be that if you have to resign, literally sort of, you know, in shame, which is what she has to do pretty much, then there should be the opportunity for people to have another vote and see if they want to keep you. If they want to keep you, fair enough. But she's on a very, very slim majority. She'd probably lose her seat altogether. And that's a good point. Very well made by Belinda. Thank you very much indeed. One here from Kate in the Wirral. I obviously have all emergency alerts all and truly off, but I happened to be at the pictures at 3 p.m. yesterday. Not a single person registered that anything was going off on their phones, even on silent. One from Leslie in Norfolk says, Mike, I actually received the phone alarm yesterday. It was about 20 seconds late, though, which is not much use if there's incoming, really, is there? 6:51.
you can't try and snipe at the Conservatives for things that weren't our fault.
Oh, I mean, I
This
haven't
is
got
not one.
time. Don't tell your big mate Donald Trump to tell his big mate Vladimir Putin to stop killing people. Then we can solve that problem like that.
Won't be surprised to know I disagree.
Why? Why do you disagree, though? Why do you want our young people left on the scrap heap? The court's time being wasted laying down a ruling on what is a woman. You and I have been speaking for far too many years about
And
this.
actually, you know, I'm very grateful to you too, because you have always covered this topic.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock, of course. Coming up to 5 minutes to 7. Rafe Heidelmann-Kuh's been here helping us with the front pages and much else besides. Apparently, though, there's something we haven't managed to point out yet on the cabinet reshuffle. Jonathan Reynolds, the fake solicitor and business secretary, apparently has been moved to chief whip. However, he's the only single cabinet member who has not yet changed his Twitter bio to register that fact. And so, according to that, he's still business secretary. So he can now be officially regarded as the fake business secretary, can he?
Yes, I mean, but it's just so depressing as a whole. It's the same old faces in new roles, you know?
Yeah. It is like, as you say, replacing the or moving around the deck chairs on the Titanic. Let's talk about the youth of today. Gen Z, apparently, they're seeking out the calm of National Trust homes because they're so worried about climate anxiety and they really need to get away from social media. They're actually going somewhere.
I mean, look, as a historian, I'm very happy they're going into these places, but gosh, climate anxiety, really? I mean, it's just it's ridiculous. A bit disappointing as well because, you know, I support Restore Trust. Restore Trust is this organisation that's trying to get the woke out of the National Trust.
Yes.
And my only great fear is that with so many of these types of people coming and becoming members of the National Trust, it's only going to get more and more woke.
That's the trouble, isn't it? Because they'll be walking around these stately homes thinking, oh my God, you know, I'm now getting sort of, you know, fears of anxiety over slavery or over the fact that, you know, Rudyard Kipling was not a very nice man. You know,
they're going to need safe spaces in every one of these places as well.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it is quite remarkable, isn't it? Absolutely incredible. Also, there's a trigger warning for Carmen. That's in the Sun today. Apparently, there's a lot of screaming and some scenes of vaping and drinking.
This is so crazy, right? Carmen came out in 1875, right. So for the last 150 years, nobody has worried about this at all. And now they're warning this production contains depictions of domestic violence, sexual assault, murder, sexual nature, alcohol consumption. That's your average episode of EastEnders on BBC One. There's no warning about that.
No,
so why on earth Carmen needs to have this?
Also, my favourite, sudden loud screams. I mean, if they've been to the opera, these people, you know.
Yeah, isn't that rather the point of the opera?
Well, yeah, exactly right. Absolutely incredible stuff. Meanwhile, talking about the lovely weather that we've been having and the sort of, you know, Indian summer, I'm not even sure you're allowed to say that anymore. Storm Amy is set to come towards the end of the week, bringing 65-mile-per-hour gales, 4 inches of rain and 20-foot waves. Gusts are pushing through in the west tomorrow and battering the rest of the country by Sunday. So, I mean, you know, there's something to look forward to.
Well, hopefully they'll get the National Emergency Text Messaging System fine then to alert us when this is happening.
Oh my goodness me, absolutely brilliant. Well, listen, there's plenty of great stories to talk about. We'll be doing more of it, of course, throughout the course of the rest of the 3 hours that we've got. Daggers says this: Mike, Steve from Ashton-under-Lyne. I got the EM alert on both my personal phone and my work phone. On my personal phone, I received it several times over the last few years. Okay, well, good for you. You'll be very well prepared. And one from Cade in Leiston. Great show, guys. Yes, I did get it on both my work and private phone. It also went off at 3:19 again. On a side note, Labour sucks. Yeah, well, I don't understand why whenever they do these emergency alarms, it just sort of doesn't work. I mean, it works for some people, doesn't work for others. I remember the last time they did it, people were getting it like an hour late. Other people got it twice. Other people didn't get it at all.
Well, you know, if I get it 30 seconds too late, there's not enough time to get under my dining table before the nuclear bomb goes off.
Exactly right. That's the real worry, isn't it? Absolutely. Rafe, thanks very much indeed. Good to see you. Yes, I did receive the alert at 3 p.m. yesterday. I was watching the Formula One at the time, and I thought an engine had suffered a catastrophic failure, says Peter in Swansea. Nan in Wales says, emergency alert, any chance we can sound the alarm to the government every time a migrant boat arrives, as they don't appear to be aware we have a bleeding emergency at the border. I mean, that would be a good one, wouldn't it? Imagine one alert for every single migrant that arrived on Shabana Mahmood's work phone. Then maybe you should do something about it then. Absolutely right. Coming up in the next hour, we've got loads to do. We've got Emma Revel to talk to, External Affairs Director at the Centre for Policy Studies. We'll also be talking to Ruth Wasserland, former member of Knesset, an expert on Arab affairs as well. Simon Calder joins us, travel correspondent at The Independent. We'll find out what the latest situation is from him up and down the country as people try to get to work without the tube. This is a talk.
Is it transphobic to say only women have a cervix?
Well, it is something that shouldn't be said. It is not right.
A woman is an adult female, and the court has made that absolutely clear. I actually welcome the judgment because I think it gives real clarity. It allows those that have got to draw up guidance to be really clear about what that guidance should say.
If you want to fight for Remain, vote Labour.
Now, there are some who say we don't need Brexit to work. We need to reverse it. I couldn't disagree more.
Day after day, there are new allegations of sleaze, of favours, of privileged access. And it's all very well the Prime Minister saying, well, say now, well, I'm paying for it.
You've decided to repay £6,000 worth of gifts.
Lord Ali is facing an investigation. I wonder how concerned you are that your biggest donor was not fully transparent.
Are you saying you made a mistake?
It was right for me to make those repayments. Thank you. Of course, I wouldn't want Donald Trump round for dinner, but don't underestimate the danger to the world if Trump is re-elected this time around. I'm anti-Trump. I would like to send my warmest congratulations to President Trump on his inauguration as the 47th President of the United States.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's coming up to very nearly 3 minutes past 7. I'm Mike Graham. It is, of course, Monday, the 8th of September. It was only 1 week ago, just one short week ago, that the government started phase 2 of their action plan. You might remember Keir Starmer talking about it and saying, basically, that it was a brand new beginning, a reset. By Friday, of course, it had all gone horribly wrong. Angela Rayner had to resign as Deputy Prime Minister, also as Secretary of State for uplifting, whatever you call it, communities, levelling up, and housing, of course. She admitted that she should have paid £40,000 in council tax, and she sort of didn't do it because she got the wrong advice. That turned out not to be true either. Meanwhile, she's in line to get £17,000 of compensation for no longer having a cabinet minister's salary, and she also loses her Grace and Favour mansion in Admiralty Arch, which is of course just down the road from Downing Street. Of course, great news though for David Lammy, who gets to move out of his Grace and Favour mansion that he had as being Foreign Secretary, and now gets to move into hers, which is suitable for him because he's now in charge of, what is it, justice, something like that. So we'll see what is going on around the country and around the world. This morning we've got lots and lots of stories in the front pages, all about Keir Starmer. He's under threat from the unions, according to the Daily Telegraph. The tubes are on strike here in London, but also unions are saying do not water down any of those things, because at the end of the day, if workers' rights get watered down, the unions are going to go on strike again. Front page of The Sun has got judges' best wishes to a 7/7 jihadi. This is a guy called Sir Robert J, who apparently sympathised with an Al-Qaeda fiend called Haroon Aswat, who's going to be released from hospital in Yorkshire. Despite police fears, he remains a threat. Nigel Farage has said Mr J should be sacked. He said, all the best, as he prepared to let him walk free. He said it must have been terrible to be locked up in prison for all that time. Front page of the Daily Mail, 30,000 reasons why Labour won't stop the boats. We've got a new Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, and she, on her first day at work, discovered that more than 1,000 people had crossed the Channel on Saturday alone, which means that more than 30,000 of them have crossed since the beginning of this year. And look at the migrant tracker there, 53,342 since Keir Starmer was put in charge. Front page of the I newspaper, migrant hotel closures to be fast-tracked as Starmer faces Labour unrest. So many stories to talk about, so much to do. We'll be hearing from all of you. Also, 2 GP surgeries a week are apparently closing down. So we want to talk about the NHS this morning as well. We'll take your calls on that. How's your experience been recently? We haven't done much on the NHS lately, but, you know, they keep banging on about 4 million appointments here, 4.5 million appointments there, one of their great achievements. Well, if they're shutting down GP surgeries at the tune of 2 a week, how exactly are the number of appointments going up? I've asked the question before. You know it's not true. 0344 499 1000. 5 minutes past 7. This is Morning Glory. Sonia says this, hi Mike, I thought I'd taken all measures to block the government from invading my phone with their annoying noises, but somehow the emergency bleep came through yesterday, scared the life out of me. Sarah near Plymouth says, I got my emergency alert on time, but I didn't get one when Labour won the general election. Yeah, you should have done. That might have been good. Well, of course, you know, they won the general election on July the 3rd, took office on July the 4th last year. It's been one disaster after another ever since. So last Monday, they decided it'd be a good idea to enter phase 2 of government. Have a look at this.
Summer's definitely over, and this morning we've got all the number 10 staff together and talked through what phase 2 of the government is going to look like and feel like. So we go into phase 2, 1st of September 2025, in good spirits, confident and with conviction.
Yeah, about 5 days later, it was all over. Angela Rayner was out of a job, and now she might be getting £17,000 compensation. There was a big reshuffle in which they moved so many people. I need 2 sheets of paper here to show you who they all are. Ridiculous. Let's get a voice note from Kitty.
Morning, Mike. Kitty from Kent here. So let me just get this straight. We have a woman who is pro-Palestine and has stated that Islam comes first above everything else in her life as our new Home Secretary, so that's not worrying at all. We have a man who can't answer basic questions on Mastermind as our new Justice Secretary. We have a woman who's failed at absolutely everything she's done as our new Foreign Secretary. We have a woman who's convicted of fraud, being considered to be Deputy Leader of the Labour Party. We have a Prime Minister whose dealings with Lord Ali, etc., still have not been fully revealed or answered for. You just couldn't make this up, and I have to say, I do not know how these people are remaining in government, and I'm deeply worried, as are so many people. But thank you for your good work all the time. Have a lovely day.
Kitty, thank you very much indeed, and how very well put. You know, it is one shambles after another. Whenever you read out this long list of litany of disasters that have happened to this government and the various members of the cabinet that have had to quit for one reason or another, you always end up missing out a few because there are so many. Let's talk to Emma Revel, External Affairs Director at the Centre for Policy Studies. Emma, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike.
Very nice to see you. It's hard to imagine, I've been saying this quite a lot lately, but with every week I turn up for work, that things just go from bad to worse. You know, Shabana Mahmood's first day on the job as Home Secretary sees over 1,000 migrants coming in on one day alone across the Channel. We hear this morning that she's going to have some meetings to work out how to stop the boats. Well, I'm sorry, what have they been doing for the last year and a bit?
Well, for a woman who's got a new job, it's probably a good place to start. But yes, it's quite concerning that it shouldn't be sort of a conversation about what to do. We should already have had a plan. Labour have had a year in government and 14 years in opposition before that to think about not just migration, but all sorts of different things. They clearly did not use that time in opposition to come up with any sort of coherent plan for government. And the year that we've had, where, you know, we've had countless resets and new missions and new pillars and new, you know, whatever Keir Starmer wants to call his touchstone policies next, that year has been primarily wasted because they didn't have a plan coming into government. Right. They just wanted to be in government.
Yes, but they've also got thousands of people working for them, you know, in many ways, as much as, you know, possibly individuals can have an impact on various government departments. The government department itself, surely to heavens, has been dealing with this problem for years and years and years and years, and I include, by the way, under the Tories, and yet they still haven't had a plan to stop the boats.
Well, what departments always need when you speak to people who do work behind the scenes is leadership. They need someone, whether it's the Secretary of State or a junior minister, whoever is in charge of that brief needs to come in and say, this is what I want to achieve and this is the timeline I want to achieve it. And with that sort of guidance, so I'm told, civil servants can work and can provide solutions. But if they're not given that sort of stability and that sort of direction, then it just isn't particularly forthcoming.
Well, why are we employing all these people if they don't know what they're doing?
Well, it's not that they don't know what they're doing, Mike. It's that they don't have the leadership and the structure and the sort of determination from the top. And, you know, if you're a civil servant and you're looking at the reshuffle last week and you're thinking, well, what if there's another reshuffle in 6 months? Get another minister with another plan. Maybe I will just sit here and twiddle my thumbs for 6 months rather than crack on.
Yeah, but I remember about, I think it was four months ago or so, maybe slightly longer. The government put out this video with all these people who were called, you know, head of Border Command, you know, head of the National Crime Agency. They were all talking about how they were coordinating things together, and these are not political people. These are, you know, basically civil service appointments. And there's about 6 of them who are all sitting around in rooms a lot, apparently, talking about how they're going to solve the problem. Now, if they haven't come up with any ideas and they now have to have some more meetings because there's a new Home Secretary, I would suggest we get rid of all of them, save ourselves a few million quid and move on.
Well, I mean, some people have suggested that we need fewer neutral civil servants and more political appointees, because then actually you've got the people with the backing of the minister and the support of the minister to help shepherd things through. I think the problem is we do have a lot of churn within leadership, and as I say, no real overarching strategy. What civil servants should be able to rely on is a government that has a plan and a vision and that they can help execute, in theory, I suppose.
Yeah, well, maybe so. Meanwhile, let's talk about some of the other opposition, some of the cabinet shake-ups, by the way. Micah says this, on Jonathan Reynolds, is he still running the steelworks? Which is a very good question. You might remember when he was Business Secretary, he was put in charge of British Steel. Nobody mentions that anymore.
Well, I suppose it's a new thing for Peter Kyle to be on top of, and I really hope I've got that right, because like you, it's a very extensive reshuffle. Yeah. I have had to have notes. I think it's Peter Kyle's job now.
It is, you're right. You absolutely 10 out of 10. Well done to you. Yeah, I mean, I've got a list as long as your arm here of all the different things that happened on Friday, and I was sort of shouting at the radio. I was driving up to Birmingham trying to get my head around the fact that Angela Rayner had actually resigned exactly at the time I said she would, which was about midday. But it was almost as though there'd been a death in the family. You hear some of these Labour MPs going on various radio stations and talk shows talking about how terribly tragic it was for Angela Rayner, a woman who admitted to basically misleading the tax man and doing something which for an awful lot of other people would end up in some kind of massive fine and possibly even a prosecution.
Well, if she does get that massive fine, as you mentioned at the top, she might be in line for a bit of a payout, so that should help her cover some of her bills with HMRC at the very least.
Yeah, well, I mean, what's your bet that she takes the money? I mean, she was one of the people who was pushing for that particular payoff system to be brought to an end because she thought it was unfair and people shouldn't get money if they've left a job for what might be called a negative reason. And she certainly is one of those. My bet is she takes the money.
I don't think she will. I think she probably will just bow to the shame and the hypocrisy of it. But you know, I'll take the bet.
There's still an awful lot of questions being asked as well around much of what happened to do with that purchase of the place down in Brighton, because it's not really been properly explained. The Times have picked up the story today about how the price of the place she owns up in Manchester under Lyme was, shall we say, inflated, to be kind, in order for her to get a 25% stake in it that amounted to 165,000 quid, because all other houses in the area that were sold recently have not sold for anything like that. So that's one question.
Well, Angela Rayner's going to have a lot more time to face these questions from the backbenches. She won't have quite so much ministerial meetings, so maybe we might get to the bottom of it once she's freed up her diary.
Yeah, and an awful lot. Yeah, but will we, though? Because, again, you know, sometimes in politics, these stories come and go and everybody moves on to the next thing, which is why, as I said, I think the reshuffle happened in the way that it did, because there was meant to be a reshuffle this week and suddenly it happened on Friday, and you can only conclude, well, the reason they did that was to try and make sure that Saturday morning's papers weren't just full of what Angela Rayner had been up to.
Yeah, and I think that probably worked. I mean, if you do have a big gap in the ministerial ranks because someone's had to resign for some sort of error, it makes sense to bring a reshuffle forward, and clearly this was a reshuffle that had been long planned, at least over the summer. Keir Starmer's team must have spent quite a bit of time thinking about it, because in practical terms it was incredibly wide-ranging but also incredibly smooth. It only took a couple of hours. These things, you know, if someone's normally kicking off about wanting to keep their job or not liking the job they've been offered, these things tend to drag on, but it was executed fairly quickly. So at least in that sense, Keir Starmer had a plan.
Yeah, but I've not spoken to anybody over the weekend who thinks that it's going to make a blind bit of difference. You know, the front page of the Times today has got an article saying that the Prime Minister is going to task Blairites in his new cabinet to try and get some growth going. But, I mean, you know, there's hardly any mention of Rachel Reeves. And one of the first things that came out on Friday was a message from Downing Street to say, oh, don't worry, Rachel Reeves' job's definitely safe. We're definitely not moving her.
Well, growth was one of the first things the Labour government talked about. They talked about it through the election, and they really hit the ground running. Growth was at the top of their agenda. It was, you know, going to cut across all of government, and we've seen absolutely none of it in a year. And with, I think it's 10, if not 11 weeks before the budget, the country is only going to get more depressed and more worried about what she might announce within that, you know, when she brings out that red box in November. So it's all well and good saying that we want to have growth. We need to actually do something about it.
Right. I mean, according to the Times piece, the new business secretary, Peter Kyle, is due to fly to Washington last night to meet White House officials and US business leaders before heading off to China. You know, they're always going to China, these Labour ministers, aren't they? Pat McFadden, the new Work and Pension Secretary, has been handed a revamped Department of Welfare and Skills. Apparently he's going to try and attempt to reform the benefits system, but that didn't work the last time, so why would it be any different now?
Well, it's even more critical. Reforming the welfare system is one of the biggest things we can do to try and get the size of the state under control and the future spending trajectory, which is entirely unaffordable. Yeah. But you're right. They tried it once. They messed it up. He needs to somehow persuade Labour backbenchers that this isn't the worst policy that's ever been suggested by a Labour politician, and I don't think that's going to be an easy job. And
apparently Louise Haigh, you know, the convicted fraudster who had to be retired as the had to go as the Minister of State for Transport, she's apparently one of the leaders of the rebellion against welfare, and now they're talking about her possibly as the next deputy leader of the party. So they're in all sorts of trouble.
I think the next deputy leader of the party is going to be a contest that's really going to be worth watching, because lots of people are being mooted, lots of names being thrown around. There isn't sort of a clear front runner as there was when Angela Rayner, you know, put her name in the hat for the job. It was sort of very easy to see that she would probably win that. Is it going to be someone from the very left of the party as a sort of counterweight to the more moderate cabinet that people are saying Keir Starmer's brought together now? Are they going to be a problem for Keir Starmer? Because when you had Angela Rayner in the cabinet as deputy leader and deputy prime minister, you had the collective responsibility of cabinet, and she had to be on side.
Yeah,
if it's just a backbencher without a ministerial portfolio, that guarantee is not there this time.
But it tells you the problem that Labour have got, that actually there's more power in a way outside of the actual cabinet than there is, inside it, because the backbenchers apparently can stop anything that they want to stop.
Well, it was always going to be the downside of a majority that was this big, especially with so many MPs who are completely new to Parliament. You know, a majority of MPs elected, last year were completely new. They don't have the sort of ties and the connections and the responsibility either of being in a previous cabinet or a previous shadow cabinet or in this one. You have a lot of people on the backbenches who are very idealistic. They've been elected for the first time. They want to make an impression, and they don't really have anything stopping them kicking off if the policies that come up are not ones that they like.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just slightly baffled and slightly distracted as I'm talking to you, Emma, looking at all these people kissing and hugging Keir Starmer and his wife. Where have they shipped them in from?
Well, the flags suggest Wales, but I've got no idea.
These will not be people, I'm sure, who would just normally be standing around outside a church in Scotland. Very bizarre. Anyway, listen, Emma, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Emma Revel, External Affairs Director for the Centre for Policy Studies. Let's get a voice note from Julie.
Morning, Mike. Julie from Stamford, presently walking in Norfolk. I switched my emergency alarm malarkey off before the last alert. If I'm about to be hit by a neutron bomb, I don't really want to know about it. And if this stupid government is about to collapse, I'll learn that on Talk Radio. Great show. Thanks, Mike. Bye.
Julie, thanks very much indeed. I've had my suspicions assuaged. Thank you very much indeed. It turns out that those pictures we were watching was in happier times when Keir Starmer and his wife I say Keir Starmer and his wife. It was actually Keir Starmer just won the election. So that was all the planted people that were up and down Downing Street shaking his hand and waving Union Jacks. Because, of course, they all love Union Jacks, don't they, in Labour now. I was confused because Mrs Starmer was wearing the same dress that she's pictured in wearing in Scotland. And I'm glad to see she's recycling them. How about this from Carl in Sheffield? On the topic of cancelled appointments, my partner has had a smear test cancelled a total of 4 times so far. 3 times at her previous GP, and now once at another she's transferred to. They have again rebooked it like the previous 3 times, so I guess that's at least 4 new appointments for Labour to brag about. Britain is broken. Love the show. Well, Carl, you're absolutely right. This is exactly what's happening in lots and lots of different parts of the country. So when they say, in Carl's wife's case, we've made 4 million new appointments, they've actually really only made 1 million new appointments because the other 3, and possibly even the 4th, don't exist. So, again, as I said before, you can make as many appointments as you like. If you're not seeing people, that's not going to help anyone. And there are, according to figures out this morning, 2 GP surgeries closing every single week in this country. Welcome to Britain under Keir Starmer. This is Talk.
The last calendar year, wasn't it still in the sort of ballpark of 800,000?
I think my understanding is it's about halved from the levels that it previously was. And I think it's certainly fair to say that, you know, depending on, you know, people have different views on what the right level is.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, coming up to 24 minutes past 7. By the way, I didn't mention this, but Ed Miliband seems to have managed to keep his job. You know, they've reshuffled practically everybody in the entire cabinet, but Ed Miliband remains as the Secretary of State for Net Zero and the Environment. But he said this at the weekend, right, just to prove that he's so out of touch with the world. Angela Rayner is one of the great British political figures of our time. Tory scum. Generations will grow up with stronger rights at work and in new homes because of her vision and leadership. And then he goes, I know she will continue to stand at the front of the fight for social justice in this country. I mean, I'm sorry. That's just mad. It's just certifiably insane. This from Trish, who says, I managed to get an appointment with my GP after 7 weeks. The waiting area in the surgery is huge, enough for at least 50 seats. I kid you not, there were 10 chairs, with only 6 of us waiting. You see, a lot of these GP surgeries haven't really ever changed the way that they operate since they changed during COVID. And they still don't allow enough people into the surgery. They don't see enough people. They see most people online or virtually, and they don't actually get people to come in. It's mad, isn't it? This from Joe. I live in a very quiet cul-de-sac in Yorkshire, full of retired people of all trades. So imagine my surprise to hear raised voices and commotion by these very same people at midday on Saturday. The reason? Labour had decided to do a bit of canvassing on our street. The noise was the Labour politicians being literally run out of the street like some old Wild West scene. It's true. That's why I was a bit puzzled about those pictures of Starmer, you know, getting kissed and hugged by people. And of course, they were all Labour Party employees, because we've seen that trick before. It was done by Tony Blair in 1997. We're not going to fall for it again. Let's talk now, though, to Ruth Wasserman-Land, who's a former member of the Knesset and, of course, an expert on Arab affairs. Ruth, very good morning to you.
Good morning to you too, sir.
Thank you. Nice to see you. We've got a new Foreign Secretary in the country. I imagine you might be quite pleased to see the end of David Lammy's reign.
I have no opinion regarding the internal affairs of another country. We have quite a few problems in our own turf, as you know. But I do think that it's quite dangerous that you have a internal security secretary as well as an education secretary that have very different interests to that of Britain, at least from what I know of Islamists, and if I know something, that's the topic in which I have quite a few years of expertise.
Yes. What worries you in particular, Ruth?
What worries me in particular, the fact that there is an agenda run by Islamists, and that's not to say every Muslim person, but definitely people who have in mind an agenda, an objective to create an Islamic caliphate, Sharia-based caliphate in the West, as well as in Israel, in Egypt, in Jordan, and in other countries that are not Islamist enough. So as I always say, it's not only an Israeli Muslim issue or an Israeli-Palestinian issue. That's one narrative that there is an interest to promote, but rather one that should and needs to be of concern to the West in general, and that, of course, includes the UK.
Yes, of course. I mean, we've got a story on the front pages this morning of The Sun in particular about an incredible story of a judge in this country who is by the name of Sir Robert J, who wished well a man who was jailed for his part in the 7/7 bombings, a man by the name of Haroun Azawat. He's going to be released from hospital, apparently, very shortly, despite police fears he remains a threat, because he's been held for the most recent years in a sort of secure unit rather than in a prison. And this judge said to him that he wished him all the best for the rest of his life, and he says it can't have been easy or pleasant being in prison all that time.
Well, what can I say? First of all, my condolences to the United Kingdom, but United Kingdom is not alone. There is an infiltration into the West, not only in Europe, but in Canada, in Australia, and the United States of America. And this is a very sophisticated infiltration. In fact, before October 7th, we used to think that this is kind of, like these scary movies that seemed almost impossible to be realistic or true. It sounded almost like a Hollywood production. But now we know that this is not the case. This is a sophisticated, systematic, well-funded plan. Actually, there is a written plan by the Muslim Brotherhood to infiltrate different circles, and internal security and education are the most important and sensitive of any country. And in those two positions, the UK has Islamists for leaders.
Yes, and so your fear is that the government is in fact infiltrated in some way?
Yes.
Right. Well, that's a very serious charge, though, isn't it?
First of all, again, I don't charge and I don't interfere with sovereign issues pertaining to other countries. Israel, thank God, has enough problems. But I do express my concern because, again, this is not an Israeli-Arab issue. It is an agenda, by the way, agenda that for those who speak Arabic, very well stated, unashamedly, openly in Arabic. Again and again, this is not something that is hidden or, innuendo. It is very, very overt and very clear. And it is said that London, and London is often mentioned as Rome and other capitals in Europe, but not only, are to be taken over by Sharia-based laws, Sharia-based ideals in order to make the world, in their perception, a better place. And this is something that should arouse fear amidst people who care about Western values like equality and security for everyone, especially women in the streets.
Certainly. I mean, nearly 900 people were arrested at the weekend at a Palestine Action protest. You know, this government has, in fact, prescribed Palestine Action as a terrorist group.
Yes.
While they have not prescribed, I don't think, the Muslim Brotherhood, strangely enough.
Well, the Muslim Brotherhood have been working for the past years very sophisticatedly and in a very systematic manner in a way that makes it more difficult to make them designated as a security threat. The United States, in fact, is currently dealing with it, but they've actually pinpointed this issue as a problem. Now, just to mention, for those who don't know, in Egypt, in Jordan, in the United Arab Emirates, in Saudi Arabia, all Muslim countries, the Muslim Brotherhood is a designated terrorist organization. And the moment you say you are a part or a member of this organization, you sit in jail, no questions asked. So they know, they understand the fear and the threat, and they know that this Muslim Brotherhood organization, by the way, the organization which you mentioned, is exactly the same. The issue and the narrative of the Palestinian word is but a dissent from the true meaning of what they intend to do. And that is, again, to infiltrate a Western-like society. There is no land issue in the ideology because the Islamist ideology transcends land and nationality and statehood. It is a religious ideology.
Yeah, interesting stuff. Ruth, good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Ruth Wasserman-Land, former member of the Knesset and an expert on Arab affairs, very worried about the West and an Islamist agenda going on. I think a lot of people in this country would share that view, but to suggest that perhaps the government has been infiltrated in some way, maybe slightly beyond the mark there, but we'll see. We'll take your view on that as well. Sarah, did we do Sarah's voice note? I don't think we did. Sarah's got something to say about the emergency alert.
Morning, Mike. Great show, as normal. Regarding the emergency alarm, we were actually at the pub having some lunch yesterday, and a couple of people's went off, and we were, like, sitting there going, not sure. And then ours went off, and then another group of people's went off, and some people's didn't go off at all. So, clearly not quite working properly, so it's all a bit strange. Thanks, Sarah. Bye.
Sarah, thanks very much indeed. Well, very much in keeping with the rest of the state of the country, really. Is it not quite working properly? It's a very English way of putting it, i.e. not working at all. Because either it works or it doesn't work. So if it's not working properly, it's not working. One from Bridget in Suffolk, who says this: I went to my doctor's surgery this week to pick up a form. The reception is permanently closed. All inquiries are handled at the dispensary window. There was no one in the waiting room waiting to see a doctor or a nurse. A large notice on the wall stated how many hours were lost last month by people not turning up for their appointments. Unbelievable. I know. It's literally like the tail wagging the dog. You get people now going, oh, please don't make any appointments because, you know, it's just going to clog up the system. And then they tell us they keep making more and more appointments, not because they clog up the system, but because it sounds nice on a sort of a TV show, where John Healey yesterday said we've added 4 million more appointments. Well, so what? You know, I might as well say I've booked myself 5 more holidays. I'm not going on them. It doesn't mean I've actually done anything. That's the problem. 7:34.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 7:36. I'm Mike Graham. Janice in Chester says, morning, Mike. The news headlines had an MP saying the government ministers have to go up a gear. Can we give Starmer a new nickname? Upper Gear Keir. Not bad. And one from Mike in Henley. The police might well have arrested 900 protesters at the weekend, but how many of those will be actually charged and convicted? Yeah, I don't know, is the straight answer to that. One from one in Tony in Suffolk. My wife and I were at an event in Felixstowe at 3 p.m. yesterday. It was shoulder-to-shoulder people. Our alert went off and pretty much everyone stopped in their tracks. Then in synchronisation stared at their mobile phones. It was like a modern sci-fi horror film. How weird. Let's get a voice note from Darren.
Morning, Mike. It's Dan from Kent. The government's plan to put migrants into military camps. I'm a veteran, and when I did serve, yeah, there was, I suppose, some accommodation that you could say was inadequate. Now, if the thought of a migrant being put into something better than any of our serving personnel disgusts me, really. What we do have is a lot of air bases which are disused, with hangars. Why we can't use them? What they do have is a bloody great fence going all the way around, which will stop them from wandering about. That would be a better idea.
Certainly would be a better idea. Darren, thank you very much indeed. Lots of people have got better ideas than this government. Shabana Mahmood, on her first day in charge at the Home Office, found out that over 1,000 migrants came over on Saturday alone, 1,097. Meaning it's up to 30,000 this year so far, which would be the highest, I think, at this moment in time in the history of migrant crossings. Let's talk to Alex Wilson now, Reform UK's London Assembly member. Alex, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. Good to see you again.
Good to see you again. I imagine you're still basking in the relative glow of the weekend conference in Birmingham. It seemed to go very well.
Yeah, it's a fantastic event. It's our biggest conference that we've had so far as a party. I mean, last year's was pretty good, but this, taken to a whole new level. So as well as the main stage and the speeches and all that kind of excitement, lots of really fascinating discussion on the fringes, lots of people meeting each other for the first time, getting involved, signing up to be candidates within their local branch, all that kind of stuff. There's a real sense of purpose and direction and energy about the weekend. I think we've put on a really good show. And yeah, energised the membership. Hopefully got some decent media coverage as well, although slightly overshadowed perhaps by goings on in Westminster.
Not really,
though. The timing that was deliberate, who knows?
I mean, there was an awful lot of coverage. I think it's probably the most coverage that the Reform parties had from what you might call the kind of the mainstream media. You know, there's a big media presence up there, a lot of interviewing going on. Nigel Farage was on Laura Kunsberg yesterday, suggesting that probably it wouldn't work if Boris Johnson decided to come and join Reform, which I think I would have agreed with as well.
100%.
Yeah, I mean, Nadine Dorries, of course, came on Friday, though, didn't she?
Yeah, well, that's an interesting one. Not universally popular decision, I must admit, amongst some of the membership. But I think what it does show, and what Nadine herself said when she announced her defection, is the Conservative Party is dead. We had a Conservative government for 14 years, and for the last part of that period, it had a huge majority, and yet was unable to do the things that it had promised the people that had voted for it. We promised that it would do, and I think that's the fact that someone who was as closely identified with that government and with Boris as PM as Nadine has moved across, I think completely underpins that feeling that the Conservative Party is dead, and if it's not quite dead yet, it certainly needs to be finished off. And Reform, we're going to do that. We're going to finish off the Conservative Party. We're going to replace them as the principal party on the right of centre of British politics, and that's why the weekend was so exciting.
And interestingly enough, I saw Jacob Rees-Mogg just before I left, and he was talking about how it's time for the right to unite. He says that he would act as an advisor to a Nigel Farage government without actually leaving the Conservative Party, but he would be more than happy to advise them on the machinery of government. Because one of the things Nigel said yesterday to Laura Kunsberg was that, the one thing Reform can't predict at the moment is how exactly they would run the country, because they don't have anyone currently, I suppose you might count Nadine Dorries now, who's ever served in government.
Yeah, and getting ready for government is going to be a really, really important part of the work that goes ahead over the next 2 to 3 years. We expect the general election to be in 2029. It could happen slightly earlier. We need to be ready for it to happen slightly earlier than that, even, so that we are ready to hit the ground running on day one if we're fortunate enough to win. And yeah, part of that is going to be trying to use some of the experience and knowledge of people who have served in government. But at the same time, we need to remember that a lot of those people who served in government, and the same is true now under the Labour government, they're serving in government and they're making a complete hash of it. So just the fact that someone's had the job doesn't mean they're going to be any good at it. What we want to do is also bring people in from outside politics, but people who've got real world experience running businesses, working in the public services, in the military, and people who have a track record of making decisions and getting things done, and raising money, spending money, employing people, sacking people, making all those kind of difficult decisions that are needed to make things work. So there'll be a huge range of talent that will come forward. Not all of it will be that has served in frontline politics previously.
No, quite. I mean, although Nigel did again say yesterday that there's going to be more Conservative defections on the way, and as you say, it's not always that popular within some of the membership of Reform. They don't really want old, washed-up Tories, but it sounds as though there's more on the way.
I think there will be, but think we need to be very careful and very clear that if people are joining us, they're joining us for the right reason. They're not just doing it to save their own skin because they've seen which way the wind is blowing. They're joining us for the right reason because they believe in what we're saying, because they think Nigel will make a fantastic Prime Minister, and that those people that join us have got something positive to bring to the table, whether it's their experience or their values or their relationships they've had with their constituents, all those kind of things. Yes, we need people to join us, and to be honest, I'd like more people from the Labour Party to think about joining us as well, because the Labour Party used to be a party that stood up for working people, and we've seen time and time again in the last 14, 15 months that it's betrayed its core kind of background. So there will be people on the left that might think about joining us as well, because we're moving beyond different kind of the traditional left-right divide is becoming slightly redundant, and what we're offering is something completely different. Step in a new direction. And people that the voters. This is a really important thing here. People that are joining us to vote for us are people who have had a range of backgrounds and range of previous political experience. Half of the council by-election gains that we've made since the general election are seats that we've gained from Labour. But a lot of the people that are now voting for us are people that didn't vote at all at the last election because they've seen that the old party system has failed, but now we're giving something different and a real opportunity to vote for change.
And the next big test, of course, is May, isn't it, of next year, where you've got not just an awful lot of local council elections, but London elections going on, Scotland and Wales as well. When I was down at Reform's headquarters a while ago, there was a big whiteboard there with a big number on it of the number of candidates you'd have to find, and it's thousands of them. How's that going?
Yeah, well, we've made a really good start on that. You know from what happened this year in the local elections, we actually managed to nominate more candidates than any other party in the county council elections that happened just 3 months ago. It's going to be a very tough challenge to do the same again next year, but we're certainly up for that challenge. In London alone, we'll need more candidates, about 1,800 or thereabouts. We'll need more candidates in London than there were in the whole of those county council elections just gone. But we're making steady progress. The branches are active. We're recruiting people. People are going through vetting. The London Council elections will be a big part of the narrative next year, but also the Scottish Parliament and the Welsh Senedd, huge opportunities for us there. There's every chance we can be the largest party in Wales after those elections, and in Scotland, the polling there has been astronomical. Compared to anything that UKIP achieved in Scotland, we are completely off the scale. We are going to have a very sizable group of MSPs elected, probably hold the balance of power. And if neither the Labour Party nor the SNP want to work with us, it's going to make life very difficult for them, either of them, trying to form an administration. But it's really important that voice is heard in Scotland as elsewhere in the rest of the country.
OK, good to see you, Alex. Thank you very much indeed. Alex Wilson, former UK's London Assembly member. They say that even a broken clock is right twice a day, says Steve, and sadly our broken government keeps changing. They've even failed at that statement, says Stephen Cornwall. One here from Carl up in the Lakes. I did get the alarm at 3 p.m. yesterday, but it seemed a total waste of time. Well, it probably was. It was a test, wasn't it? Let's get a voice note from Mike.
Morning, Mike. Mike in Cheshire here. This emergency alert, I have it switched off. If the end of the world is nigh, I don't really want to know about it. I'd rather just be sitting in a beer garden, drinking a pint of beer, and not knowing.
Yeah, exactly right. I think a lot of people would say the same. Here's one from David in Dover. He says, morning, Mike. I had a letter from the NHS advising me of an appointment next March. The next paragraph cancelled the above appointment. That's a record even for them. And one here from Dennis in Aberdare. On NHS, he said, I had a rash for 11 months. It ripped my body apart. I was seen by 4 doctors with no success. I went down the pub, met the boys, who identified what it was, got some medication. It cleared up in 2 weeks. We need to keep the pubs open. Bye-bye, jolly hockey sticks. Well, I mean, if you go along with the story in the front page of the Telegraph, you can go and get your prostate tested in your local church, if you want. According to this, apparently tests have been administered in golf and rugby clubs because of concerns the health service is not proactive enough. Experts behind the programme say a number of tests in some areas have doubled because of Chris Hoy's diagnosis. And people listen to what he had to say. And, listen, I'm all for people getting tested. I just think, you've got to be a bit careful about how it's all managed and handled. And, if the NHS is supposedly such a great service, why are we getting sort of DIY prostate testing going on around the country? There are 250,000 men. 215,000 rather have had these individual tests. 350,000 tests given out outside of a sort of medical setting. It seems a bit odd to me, I'm afraid. Call me old-fashioned. 7:47.
and they were going to have to do a reshuffle anyway, I think the calculus changed, and it was a bit of a, well, since we have to do a reshuffle and we had this plan for one, I think really it is a bit of a case of go big or go home. They decided, you know, the risk of doing it was lower than the risk of not doing it.
And it also took away some of the headlines, I suppose, from the, you know, the specifics of Angela Rayner. Not that they disappeared, but it meant that the big headlines by the 6 o'clock news was the reshuffle rather than the resignation.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock, of course. Julie Hartley-Brewer here. Coming up to 10 to 8. It's Monday the 8th of September. Morning, Mike. Had a letter from the NHS. Advised me of I've done that one already. Watching those boat clips you were showing, it's so sad, says Caroline in Norfolk. We sent our men to Dunkirk and they died to help end the war in Europe. Now the French send boats here loaded with who knows what and do nothing to help us. Well, that's the thing. An awful lot of people came over in small boats on Saturday, 1,097 on the first day of Shabana Mahmood's actual job as the new Home Secretary. Here's one from Pam, who says, morning, Mike. With Angela Rayner being sacked as Deputy Prime Minister, what has happened to her personal photographer? Very good question. Wonder if she'll take the personal photographer with her, but she probably won't, because she won't be able to pay her out of her measly £96,000 MP salary. Darren from Leicester says, Mike, I was in Asda yesterday with the wife spending millions of pounds, and I think everyone's phones all went off. It was like the store fire alarm system going off. Anyway, keep up the good work. Well, I'll tell you, a man that often gets international alarms because he gets to be at the heart of every single emergency is Mr. Simon Calder, travel correspondent with The Independent. He joins me now. Simon, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. Yeah, I'm on the bus. Obviously, we can talk about the London Underground strike. It's actually the reason I am at Heathrow Airport. I was due here to talk to you half an hour ago, but unfortunately British Airways isn't having the best possible day, so we were late and then they decided to put us all on the bus. But anybody who is arriving at London Heathrow, obviously the busiest airport in the UK, is going to find that the Piccadilly line, the main way in and out for tens, hundreds of thousands of passengers, and in particular also the staff. They are going to discover that it's closed. There is an alternative from here, the Elizabeth line, as well as the Heathrow Express, but those are more expensive and they're going to be jolly crowded today. The big problem is that, well, workers on the London Underground are being, quote, rostered into exhaustion, and they need a 32-hour week. And to prove it, well, they're having quite a sophisticated strike. The way that it's working is that different groups of workers are going on strike all this week, right, well, until 8 o'clock in the morning on Friday. But because it's only a few people, or relatively few people at a time, they can close the whole system down, but they only lose a day or two's pay. So it's getting a heck of a lot of bang for their buck in terms of striking, yes.
And the other thing is that they seem to be striking more over not so much pay as conditions. They want more free travel, don't they, for them and their families?
Well, at the moment they get free travel on Transport for London for them and a partner or spouse. They also get discounts on Eurostar, which is very nice. Good if you like that sort of thing. But what they very much want is to be able to have not a 35-hour week, which is the current limit, but they'd like it to come down to 32 hours, and they'd also like just to work 4 days a week. So that's what they're striking for. Transport for London says this is completely unaffordable. There's absolutely no way we can do it, and therefore they are saying, right, we will we'll just strike until we get it. So it's one of those strikes where it's very difficult to see any resolution, costing the capital, obviously, hundreds of millions of pounds in lost productivity and so on. The hospitality industry going to be devastated once again. But Transport for London say it is just completely unaffordable.
Well, I mean, to be honest, if I could keep up with all the cabinet changes, I could ask you to ask the Secretary of State for Transport. But
yeah,
I can't remember who that is.
Yeah, it's all a bit of a mess. But London generally kind of staggers through these things. It's reputationally very damaging to the capital, of course. And if the London Underground strike doesn't get you, then probably the French Bloc 2 will. This is happening on Wednesday. Very exciting. We're expecting the French government to fall today because they want to impose austerity measures. And instead, on Wednesday, this kind of loose coalition of opposition is just saying we're going to stop everything, and that will include an awful lot of trains, could include motorways being blocked, it could include all kinds of
Well, I was speaking to a French friend of mine the other day who said it's going to make the Gilets jaunes look like just your average Monday in the middle of Paris where nobody does anything. It's going to be a real chaotic, kind of wall-to-wall protest everywhere. There's going to be a lot of mad spread around some town halls, I would imagine.
Well, it's not going to be pretty. If you at the moment, Eurostar says they think that things are going to be okay. They run the trains from London to Paris and Lille in France. But if that doesn't get you, then the following week we've got the French air traffic controllers going on strike from the 18th and to the 19th of September, Thursday and Friday, really busiest days of the week for aviation. And of course, France is on the way to lots of places. So even if you've got no interest in going to Paris, Lyon or Marseille, if you want to go from pretty much anywhere in the UK to pretty much anywhere in Spain or Italy or Switzerland, France is in the way. So it's going to be fairly grim, I fear. And the air traffic controllers, they're on a really interesting dispute. They just say they really don't rate the management and they want completely new management, and therefore they are going on strike. And I'm just taking you to the Underground, which isn't running here at Heathrow. I managed to escape the bus, and here we are. There's a helpful man who's saying that nothing is working. It's a metaphor.
Welcome to Britain. Welcome to Britain. Nothing's working. I mean, is it one of those strikes where there are literally no trains? Because, sometimes they have a strike where you get the odd train. Are there no trains at all on all the lines then?
Right, OK. I was expecting there to be odd little suburban stretches. Quite often you'll find that they're kind of western reaches of the Central Line or the bit from Earl's Court down to Wimbledon work. But nothing going anywhere today. And that's on the London Underground. The Elizabeth Line is still working. The Docklands Light Railway is working, but not on Tuesday or Thursday due to a separate dispute. There's going to be a test afterwards, so do pay attention. London Underground should be working, but it's just a mess for so many people, including the roughly 120,000 tourists who will arrive in London Heathrow today and discover that their planned trip on the tube to Kensington isn't going to happen. So I'd like to bring you some good news maybe later on this week, Mike.
Well, I mean, maybe I'll just have a 1970s nostalgia day tomorrow and just go back to the future and pretend it was all great back then, because we all didn't have to do very much work. I mean, I was at school, luckily, for most of it, so I used to just sit at home, twiddle my thumbs. It was all right. Anyway, listen, well, I wish you well trying to get wherever you're going, Simon, so thank you very much indeed for joining us. Simon Calder live from Heathrow Airport, where there are plenty of planes but no trains, unfortunately. Let's get a voice note from Darren.
Morning, Mike. Darren from Suffolk. Great show as ever. Really enjoyed your bit at the Reform Conference. So, what are these people in America, China thinking about the UK? Well, they're already thinking dodgy things about our freedom of speech, obviously. And then you've got a new business minister flying across, and they're thinking, well, OK, what's your ideas? Well, I don't know anything about business. Imagine being in a business yourself, Mike, and you being the marketing manager, and all of a sudden they say, we're going to put you as sales director today. I don't know anything about sales. Well, just get on with it. And then after 6 months, when you finally just getting your feet under the table. We're going to make you finance director. I don't think about finance. I'll just get on with it. I mean, reshuffles, Mike, should be banned, or they should be for people with experience. Have a lovely day.
I mean, why don't they just reshuffle the Prime Minister and give that job to somebody else as well? Because this one certainly doesn't know what he's doing. This one here from Gaz, who says, Mike, I got the alarm as I was reversing my caravan back onto my driveway after a weekend away. As my phone was still connected to my car's Bluetooth, it blasted through the car speakers, which startled the hell out of me, causing me to almost ram the caravan through the front of the house. Cheers, Starmer. Yeah, brilliant. Thanks very much indeed. Lots more of that to come in the next hour. David Wooding's going to be here. Henry Bolton's talking about borders. And, of course, we've got Mark Littlewood, Director of Popular Conservatism. It's all happening right here on Talk. I'm Mike Graham, back after the news. We've just been talking in the office here about how many of us have been attacked at some point or other by some form.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. Coming up to nearly 3 minutes past 8. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock. Mark Dolan's actually here, in for Julie Hartley-Brewer. One here from a Terry in Sittingbourne. He says, Mike, we received the emergency alert yesterday. The cats jumped out of their skins. Keep the excellent show going. We've got lots to talk about this morning. Front page of The Sun. Judge's best wishes to 7-7 jihadi. A judge called Sir Robert J. sympathised with Al-Qaeda fiend Haroon Aswat, 50 years old. He's about to be released from hospital in Yorkshire despite a police fear that he remains a threat. He was one of the masterminds of the 7-7 bombings, and there's pictures of him alongside hate preacher Abu Hamza in 1999. He was also sentenced in a New York court in 2015. He's Mr. Big, basically, back here for what was Al-Qaeda. And what Mr. Justice J said to him was, it can't have been pleasant being in prison all that time. For heaven's sake, unbelievable stuff. Also, we've been asking you about the emergency alert that went off yesterday. Some people think we should have had one every time a migrant hits the shores unannounced, but 30,000 of them have now come, so that's an awful lot of alerts, because on Saturday, as many as 1,097 people actually crossed the channel in the first day of the new Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood's sort of job description. So we'll be talking about that as well. Let's get a voice note from Lisa.
Good morning, Mike. It's Lisa from Canterbury. This bloody alarm thing, I mean, I turned mine off when they very first started doing that. What a stupid concept. And then something I saw on the news saying, oh, to keep you all safe. I'm just wondering if we can have that alarm every single time a boat arrives. I mean, imagine that. God, it'd be going off all bloody day.
Absolutely right. Migrant hotel closures to be fast-tracked as Starmer faces Labour unrest is what it says on the front of the iPaper. On the front page of the Times, it's got the Prime Minister to task Blairites in new cabinet with growth, and unions threaten the Prime Minister over Angela Rayner's law. Angela Rayner, of course, gone on Friday. And still, we don't know whether she's going to take the £17,000 payoff that she doesn't say other people should get. And we still don't know whether there's going to be more inquiries into precisely how she managed to shoehorn £165,000 out of her own house in Ashton-under-Lyne by selling it to the trust that operates for her son. It's all very confusing. The story, I think, is not over yet. We'll talk to Mark Littlewood from Popular Conservatism in a moment about all of that. 0344 499 1000 is the number. Also, I'll be telling you about why the Metropolitan Police Chief wants a law change over tweets so that his officers don't go around arresting people for no good reason. Plus, a big story in the front of the Times this morning. 2 GP surgeries are shutting every single week. So I wouldn't buy any of the arguments being made by this government that, oh, we've got more and more appointments going out all the time. 4 million new appointments created. Wrong, wrong, wrong. It's 5 minutes past 8. This is Morning Glory. This is, of course, the home of common sense, and one here from Ian. I take my hat off to you, Ian. This may be the best tweet of the day so far. It's even 2-tier emergency alerting, it would seem. All the best. Yeah, absolutely right. Let's have a listen to what some of the most esteemed pundits said when this government took over back in July of last year. Here's Andrew Marr on Question Time.
I think just having a stable government that will be there for 5, maybe 10 years, who knows, but with sort of ordinary, down-to-earth, serious people talking like the rest of us in charge of the government, and a plan that doesn't shift very much for investment, is going to mean a wall of money coming into this country from around the world. You look at the chaos going on the continent, particularly in France. You look at the chaos likely ahead in the United States. And suddenly, for once, for the first time in many of our lives, actually Britain looks like a little haven of peace and stability.
Yeah, well, that was back in July of last year. I imagine Andrew Marr may be feeling a little bit embarrassed now, having said that. The grown-ups are in charge, of course. It's all going to be peace and light and marvellous and fantastic because they speak like we do. I don't know what he means by that. I presume he means clever people like me who absolutely know everything there is to know and who can never, ever be wrong. Well, I'm afraid, I'm sorry to say, you are wrong, you were wrong, and you're going to be wrong again. Let's talk to Mark Littlewood, Director of Popular Conservatism UK. Mark, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike. Great to be with you.
I just spoke to Simon Calder, who I think pretty much summed up the state of our nation. He's just arrived at Heathrow because he had to fly there rather than try to use the tube. And as he came out from the terminal into the area where trains are going, there's a guy standing there saying, "Terribly sorry, but nothing's working."
Yeah. Yes, we might as well put that sign up pretty much everywhere across the country, I would have thought, Mike.
I mean, it's hard to imagine how this government has so quickly, completely and utterly dissolved even the fairly crappy kind of state of affairs they inherited. They've completely just blown up the whole place, haven't they?
Yeah, I think that's right. It was interesting to hear that Andrew Marr clip, because I think that was more or less straight out of the Labour Party's playbook. I think they believed just over a year ago, at the time of the general election, that all that was really required was to remove the Tories and put them in, and then because of some magical osmosis, because they were the great and the good, the UK would suddenly be healed. I mean, talking of the tube strikes, Mike, you remember that they seemed supremely confident that they would end industrial strife.
Yeah.
And it seems to be getting worse, doesn't it?
Well, so far we've had train strikes, we've had doctor strikes, we've had nurses strikes coming, I think, every time. We've got tube driver strikes. You know, it doesn't stop, does it?
No, it doesn't stop. And bear in mind, the strategy of the Labour government at the outset was to pay these people more money with money that we didn't really have. Well, that hasn't assuaged the trade unions at all, it seems. I mean, it's a bit like a strategy of feeding your left arm to the alligator in the hope that will satiate its appetite. I'm afraid it doesn't.
Yeah.
So they keep coming back for more. So
except in Starmer's case, he's feeding my right arm to them as opposed to his own.
Well, that's right. Yes, he's feeding us one by one.
Yeah.
He's feeding us one by one. So, yeah, my sense is nothing works. I mean, this emergency alarm system yesterday, it didn't go off on my phone. So I'm now trying to work out whether the government has earmarked me as one of the people who can safely die in a national emergency, or perhaps I should be more optimistic and hope I'm one of the people earmarked for whatever nuclear bunker the remaining Labour government will be in. So, yeah, nothing much to bring us cheer, Mike, is there, other than your upbeat analysis.
Well, this is it, and I mean, I like to try and keep people amused, so I'm going to show you what BBC did yesterday when the emergency alert was leading up to its announcement.
And the idea is there's going to be a 10-second siren sound, and your phone is going to vibrate. 2 seconds. Ah.
Oh, right. We are right on 3 o'clock. I've got no alerts. My phone's not vibrating.
We're running late.
And I'm not on either of my phones. There you go.
So it should be that phones that are connected to the 4G or 5G network should go off any time now.
It's not just me, is it? It's not
well,
just that.
It's not going off on my phone either. This could turn out to be some classic television here.
Yeah, not quite classic, but there we are. The funny thing about that one, Mark, is the BBC presenter outing herself as having a burner phone. I'm not quite sure why.
Yeah. Well, also the other thing, quite typical BBC, they seem bewildered and surprised when a state project doesn't work perfectly.
Yes.
We shouldn't be bewildered or surprised when a state project doesn't work perfectly. You would have thought the lead-up is, a bit sceptical this is going to work at all. But no, when the government doesn't do, when the government plan doesn't work, the BBC presenters seem to be amazingly surprised.
Exactly.
For me, it's now water off a duck's back. I expect it not to work.
Well, I was watching and listening on Friday as I was driving around some of the comments on the demise of Angela Rayner, and you might have been forgiven if you just landed from a spaceship from Mars for thinking she just died. There were people going on about how tragic it all was and how terrible it was for her. What an amazing woman. Ed Miliband calling her one of the greatest politicians of our times. His words, not mine. Meanwhile, there's still an awful lot of questions, it seems to me, to be asked about, one, how she managed to inflate artificially the price of the house in Ashton-under-Lyne in order to extract 165,000 quid from it as 25%, which she could then put in to the house down in Hove, because it seems to me that there's a lot of questions around that still.
Yeah, I think that's right. And, I obviously don't know what the appropriate valuation of a house is, but or was. But the important thing here in law, Mike, is that whatever transaction was made on that house has to be decided to have been in the interest of her disabled son.
Right.
It's a trust set up for his benefit. So the big question is, was it clearly to his benefit to see his share in that property go from 50% to 75%,
right,
and lose about 160k out of the trust fund? I mean, I guess an argument could be made for that. I don't know what that argument would be, but that argument would have to be made. Or was the transaction in Angela Rayner's benefit, who needed to lay her hands on 160 grand or so to put down a deposit on a flat that she fancied buying in Hove? On the face of it, it looks a little bit more like the latter, doesn't it?
Well,
looks
it does.
Like really the transaction was done for her benefit, not her son's benefit.
Yeah.
And that is not the way that you're allowed to run a trust. It has to be run for the benefit of the beneficiaries, not for the benefit of the trustees.
Well, that's certainly something that my understanding of was exactly that last week when I was asking about it. And also now she's in the frame for a £17,000 payoff, which basically she had campaigned to stop. She said she didn't think it was right that cabinet members should get a payoff, particularly if they had to resign because of some kind of scandal.
Yes, she couldn't have been clearer about this. And I think one of the causes of her demise has been not just her behaviour, but how vigorous and rigorous she was about any Tory cabinet minister who sort of put a tick in the wrong box or even began to even sniff that they might not have paid all of the tax that they were liable for. She showed no mercy at all. There was never any suggestion from Angela Rayner to say, well, this doesn't look very good on the surface from this particular Tory, but let's allow justice to take its course. Oh, no, 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 no. The first remotest smell of bad behaviour, she was calling for their heads. And you're right about this payout, Mike. She was saying that if people are dismissed because of a breach of conduct or a breach of the ministerial code, they shouldn't get the payout. I guess you could probably say perhaps if a minister has to resign, I don't know, on grounds of ill health, for example, you might be, eligible for the payout. And I think it would be remarkable now if she were to accept this payout. Obviously, I don't know her financial circumstances. They've clearly worsened as a result of her resignation. But the odd thing that she's done, rather daft thing she's done politically, I think, Mike, is if you want any chance of a future political comeback, the best thing to do is to resign quickly.
Which she didn't do.
The blame, which she didn't do. And you then hope that people forgive you later down the line, having clung on by her fingernails to the last possible moment, and now still, as I understand it, not ruling out taking a severance payment that she didn't believe that Conservative ministers should get, that she wanted prohibited and will be prohibited, I think, come October, would be extraordinary behaviour. I think she would make a resurrection of a future political career even less likely if she now takes that money.
I think so. I mean, of course, on the other side of the argument, 17 grand is almost half of the 40,000 she's got to give to the taxman for messing up. We haven't still heard really from HMRC as to whether or not they're going to fine her. I was saying to people last Friday, I made a late payment by mistake once because my accountant forgot to remind me to the VAT man, and I got fined a bunch of money. And when I wrote to them appealing it and saying, look, I'm really sorry, it was an oversight, they didn't take that as an excuse. They said, well, I'm sorry, we're still going to have to fine you. Simple as that. We know that you've paid for years and years and years. You never missed a payment. You missed one payment. Here's a fine, and they didn't let me off with it.
No, exactly right. I think many of us have experiences like that you make some sort of genuine error, slip of the pen, something gets in the way, you fess up to it immediately. You will find that the authorities are typically merciless in pulling the money back and fining you. Virtually no leeway for the average citizen. So I don't think there should be any leeway for the ex-Deputy Prime Minister either. You would think that there was an even greater burden on her, not just because of what was a senior role in government, but because she could not have been clearer how much it mattered to her, that everybody must follow the rules exactly by the letter, and not to do so should lead to your elimination from public life. So I hope that there is no question of the HMRC going lightly on her, because they sure as heck don't go lightly on the rest of us, do they?
No, exactly right. And I mean, for most ordinary people watching this morning, £17,000 is a lot of money, as is 40,000, and some people have already asked me how she got 40 grand to just pass over to HMRC that she's had lying around a bank account. Most people don't make that in a year. 17,000 quid is a payoff for having to leave the government in disgrace, I think is a ludicrous and a ridiculously outmoded system. It's designed for the old days when these people didn't really have proper jobs, and they'd have to sort of go off back to the shires and have to spend it on buying a few more cattle or something, But let me ask you about the state of Keir Starmer, because, as much as he's tried to rehabilitate his government on Friday by doing this kind of fake appointment scenario, shuffling the pack, everybody knows he's on very much borrowed time now, isn't he?
Yes, I suppose that's right. But the borrowed time could, I'm afraid, stretch out quite a long way into the future. A bit like their plan to sort of solve industrial strife. They keep telling us that economic growth is their top priority, but again, they just seem to be trying to will it into existence without actually having an economic plan to bring it about. It's a sort of rain dance. I think if they keep saying economic growth enough, economic growth will emerge. Well, it's not the way the economy works. I've seen some newspaper reports today that the Blairites are back to try and bring about economic growth. But you dig into the reports, what are they actually going to do to bring about economic growth? Because we have on the horizon now Angela Rayner's workers' bill to give workers more rights, supposedly, in the workplace. Well, that means you're giving businesses much more costs. They will be much more reluctant to take on new workers. So despite the fact they seem to be wishing economic growth as a kind of soundbite, it's nearly impossible to find any policy that I think a sensible economist would say, oh yeah, that will lead to economic growth.
Right.
And it's very easy to find a lot of policies that you think would push in the other direction. That's to say, dampen economic growth.
Well, one of the things that they mentioned in the Times piece this morning is that there's going to be a kind of an overall kind of stripping away, perhaps, of some of the net zero policies. But so far, one of the few cabinet members who's not been moved is Ed Miliband. Surely, if you wanted to change the net zero rules, first of all, you'd move Ed Miliband out of the way and make sure that you put somebody in who's a bit more progressive and who might actually say, do you know what, some of this stuff isn't really necessary.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right, and I think you need to go much further than that. Again, the implication is, isn't it, Mike, that they're going to sort of edge away from some of the madder parts of the green policy. But I think you've got to actually say, look, carbon net zero by 2050 isn't merely impossible; it's total madness. We're abandoning that target. Our main aim is going to be make sure that we have cheap energy. Because you've basically got a choice. You
They
can
keep
either
saying it, but guess what? Yeah, but they keep saying we're going to get cheap energy, but it just keeps going up.
Yeah, of course, because your choice is carbon net zero or cheap energy. Pick a lane. Right. So far, they've picked the lane of carbon net zero. Now, maybe they'll swerve a little bit off that lane, but I think only a smidgen. I mean, our energy costs in Britain, Mike, I think are about 3, nearly 4 times what they are in the United States of America.
Yeah.
How are you expecting energy-intensive businesses to remotely compete with the Americans, let alone everything else that's going on? So if you want growth, let's go for cheap energy and let's put carbon net zero firmly on the back burner. But I don't see any signs of that happening for as long as Ed Miliband's in post.
Well, we look out for Keir Starmer's first tweet of the day, or lie of the day, as I like to call it. This one has just come in from about 14 minutes ago. Investing in defence means investing in Britain's future. Working people across the country will have access to more opportunities, from engineering jobs to skilled apprenticeships, backing British jobs, British industry and British innovators. I mean, you might as well have written it in Chinese. What does it mean?
Yes. Well, quite. I mean, I think what he's trying to get across is if the government invests in a particular sector, it generates jobs in that particular sector. I mean, that is technically true. The problem they've got, the wider picture they've got, that they are absolutely refusing or are, if you like, emotionally and politically incapable of grappling with, is the big problem in Britain is that regulation is way too high, government spending is way too high, and taxes are way too high.
Yeah.
And although I do favour an increase in the defence budget, it's got to be at the expense of other areas of expenditure. We can't just see the government continuing to spend more and more on everything, because guess what? Governments don't generally spend money as well and as efficiently as the private sector does. And if you really want to generate jobs, growth, encourage enterprise, see higher rates of return, allow people to save for their retirement, allow people to spend more money in the economy, it's the private sector that's got to do the heavy lifting. And all the government really needs to do is to take their foot off the private sector's throat. Well, this government hasn't really shown a great willingness or propensity to do that, sadly, and that's why I expect growth to be extremely sluggish for the foreseeable future, which is bad news for the Labour government, but more importantly, bad news for the British people.
Absolutely right. Great to talk to you, Mark Littlewood. Thank you very much indeed. Director of Popular Conservatism UK. This from Maggie in London. So we're going to get an emergency alert alarm. I didn't get one myself of a potential attack. So where do they expect us to go? That's a good question. This is from Sandy as well. If the emergency alert was for real, what should we have done? Panic bought loo roll and pasta, baked banana bread, worn a useless blue paper mask and eaten a Scotch egg? What? Nobody knows. Nobody told anybody what was going to happen, other than the fact that sometimes an alarm might go off, but most of you won't get it. Brilliant. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 26 minutes past 8. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock when Mark Dolan will be here. Don't forget, if you miss anything, there is a Morning Glory podcast that comes out every single day around about 10:15, 10:30 when the show is over. Also, check out the Independent Republic of Mike Graham YouTube channel where you can find not only the show itself every day, but lots of great clips, lots of other things as well. Plank of the Week, which was brilliant this week, by the way. An all-female panel. Of course, the Plank of the Week was Angela Rayner, naturally. We're going to talk to David Wooding in a moment, journalist and political commentator. He's got a big piece on page 10 of The Sun this morning, talking about how Downing Street's looking more and more like an episode of The Traitors, which is rather clever. Let's get a voice note first from Mike on the reshuffle.
Morning, Mike. Mike in North Yorkshire here. A thought's just popped into my head with all these Labour restructure and reshuffle and all these positions and people who were convicted fraudsters getting back up there at the top. It's not going to be long, is it, before she's learned her lesson? Big Angel will be up there back in cabinet again. There'll be so just let her lie low for a few months and then bring her back in slowly and boost her back up again. It'll all be worked out and arranged. Pigs at the trough. Conservatives stood back from their side of having their snouts in it, and Labour have got theirs in it now. That's it.
Right, thank you very much indeed. Let's say hello to David Wooding. David, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike.
Good to see you, sir. I mean, Mike makes a good point there, and he kind of sums up the feelings of the British nation, doesn't he? Because I think people are just sick to death of these MPs, these cabinet ministers. They come, they go, they get involved in a bit of a scandal, then they come back. You know, that's how they see it.
It's disillusionment with a capital D, Mike. I think people always say they're all the same, and every time a new government comes in, they try to say, no, we're different. It's going to be change. And then before long, and in this case 14 months, we start seeing more problems with this government that make you think, well, yes, they are all the same. And that's why Nigel Farage is doing so well in the polls. Now, it may well be that he makes a rotten Prime Minister and that he hasn't got a plan for government, but people don't care. They've had the Tories for 13 years and they've had Labour for 14 months and they don't seem any better to them.
No. Well, Nigel Farage is so confident about that he actually admitted it yesterday. He actually said it on Laura Kunsberg's show. You know, don't ask me how I'm going to run the government because we don't have enough people that know how to do that yet. And it still hasn't affected his ratings in the polls.
No, it just shows the level of disillusionment and how fed up people are with the status quo. I think a lot of people are prepared to take a risk now. They don't even care. I've had conversations with people and they just say, I don't care. This is I've had enough of them. Yeah. And you get people saying they're not going to vote as well, which is probably not the answer.
Yeah, I mean, I was up at the Reform conference at the weekend, and the people who are now, you know, very much embedded as Reform fans, as Reform members, and growing, are never going back. They're never voting Labour or Conservative ever again.
No, and the strange thing is, you know, they're portrayed as a right-wing party, but they're doing things which the working classes want, you know, cracking down on migration, cracking down on benefit cheats, tough on crime, all the sort of things which are the bread and butter to hard-working people who don't have a lot of money and get on with their lives.
Exactly right. Your piece today about traitors is a great cartoon, by the way. You say it may not be an imposing castle and there's no Claudia Winkleman, but Downing Street's become the stage for a real-life version of the traitors. I mean, but the way you've written this, it looks like Keir Starmer is certainly not out of the woods yet.
No. Well, the problem, what I'm trying to do in this column, Mike, is to throw forward from where we've been, because the last week or the last 8 days, we've been talking about Angela Rayner and what she's done wrong. We now know she's done something wrong and she's gone. What does it mean for Keir Starmer? And what it means is he's got some real troubles ahead, because the number one problem is that the Labour Party inside are really angry. They're seething. They like Angela Rayner, and they saw her as a bit of a standard bearer for the left of the party and the working classes. And she was authentic in that sense. She's gone, so they need to appoint, because one of the 3 jobs she had, Deputy Prime Minister, Housing Secretary, and the third one, deputy leader of the Labour Party. It's that third one, which is an elected post.
Yeah.
So Keir Starmer does not have a say. It's not in his gift. So there's now an election on, which will take off at the Labour Party conference in Liverpool later this month, where they have to pick a new deputy leader. And that is going to be one hell of a bum fight. And they're all out to, they think that Keir Starmer's trying to place his own person in there.
Right.
He probably is too. And they're all out to try to elect their own person. So the knives are out, and anger, which has been building up for 14 months, is boiling over.
Well, it all started on Friday afternoon, didn't it? Because I was sitting in my car listening to various different shows, and there were two schools of thought. There was the one who were the kind of Morgan McSweeney types who were saying, oh, you know, the best thing here is if we don't expose ourselves to, you know, ridicule by having a really, really bloody, horrible, ghastly, you know, down and dirty fight. Let's just get a candidate together that everybody can agree on and very much kind of do it from the centre. But the Labour backbenchers aren't going to wear any of that, are they?
No. There's one person I spoke to over the weekend who was saying that a lot of people in the Parliamentary Labour Party don't like Keir Starmer.
Yeah.
And that this is...
Well, join the rest of the country then.
Well, this is the this is the traitor's analogy. You see, he doesn't really know who's a traitor and who's a faithful now, because there are people, you know, plotting, and there's some absolutely bizarre rumours flying around about stalking horses for Andy Burnham, and Ed Miliband wanted to have a second run at being leader. I can't see that happening, to be honest. But you know, there's all sorts of plotting going on, and of course he's got other things to do while this is all going on. He's got a budget coming up in November the 26th, and he's basically owned that budget now, because he's undermined his Chancellor.
Yeah.
He's nicked a geeky deputy, Darren Jones, to go with him down street, and taken on 2 economic advisors. So if anything goes wrong with the budget, it'll all be down to him.
Right. And you got the ghost of Emily Thornbury coming up behind him, right, over on one side.
Yeah.
And you got Louise Haigh, the other woman who he had to fire for being, you know, a fraudster, who's also in the frame. It's bizarre.
Yeah, well, all these people who've been fired, I mean, every time you fire somebody in a cabinet, it adds another person with resentment on the back benches. Now, Emily Thornbury, she was Shadow Attorney General for several years.
Yeah.
And when he got into power, she didn't get the job. And who's he brought in is one of his human rights lawyer mates, Lord Hermer, who's not even an MP, to be Attorney General. So, you know, I would suspect there was an element of anger within Emily Thornbury.
Well, this is the trouble. I mean, everywhere he looks, he's got an enemy, hasn't he? I mean, he can't turn his back on anyone, really.
Yeah, and then, of course, he's got the boats to sort out. And he's had to remove a massive turfing out of the ministers in the Home Office to bring in a second team. Now, if that doesn't work now, what's he going to do? He's brought on his substitutes now. Has he got anyone else on the bench to bring on to sort out the boats if Shaban Mahmood and their new team don't do it?
No, if he was managing England, I don't think he'd have even got 2 goals against Andorra, to be honest. I mean, that would have been hopeless. Listen,
well, he got a knighthood without winning the World Cup.
Yeah, exactly. Brilliant stuff, David. Great column. Thank you very much indeed, David Wooding, journalist and political commentator in The Sun today, calling it the Traitors' Gate moment for Keir Starmer, because literally everywhere he looks, there are people out to get him. And that's not just in the middle of the cabinet, it's all over the country. Let's have a look at what they're saying on the letters page of The Sun.
Letters from The Sun, the page where you tell Britain what to think. For more, visit thesun.co.uk.
And it's almost as though Sun readers have been listening to this show, which we know they do. Sean in Folkestone says this: Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer's big cabinet reshuffle is like rearranging the deck chairs on the sinking Titanic. Reform leader Nigel Farage is like the captain of rescue ship RMS Carpathia, steaming ahead to pluck Titanic survivors from the lifeboats. The Prime Minister is still not listening to the electorate, installing this new minister and that, but failing to remove deadbeats such as Chancellor Rachel Reeves and Net Zero Secretary Ed Miliband, who are dragging Labour ever deeper into the abyss. That's a great letter, that. Ben in Beckenham in Kent says, so our spineless Prime Minister is forced into a cabinet reshuffle following his resignation of his shamed deputy Angela Rayner. The problem is the 2 people most in need of being reshuffled, 2-tier Keir and Rachel from accounts, are each still in post, despite clearly being totally out of their depth. So true. And Danny Murphy says this: Nigel will stop the boats in 2 weeks. It's like Trump saying he'll end the Ukraine war in a week. Yeah, right. But people buy this claptrap. Well, Danny actually explained that what he would do is within 2 weeks of passing the law to get it done, he would get it done. but of course they've got to pass the law first, and that's what he explained. It's coming up to 8:35. Let's get Pete on the emergency alarm.
I'm just wondering, right, yesterday's nuclear all-out attack, catastrophe, terrorist, blah, 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 warning signal that we got at 3 p.m, it's pointless if it's under a nuclear attack. And also, how much does it cost the taxpayer? Honestly, it's more likely one of these get indoors or else curfew alerts, not 1984 style.
Well, apparently it's going to cost something like 25 million quid to install this emergency alarm. I don't know where they pick these numbers from. How is it 25 million quid to send a text message, which is effectively what it is, with a noise attached? John in Essex says this: morning, Mike. I'm wondering if these emergency test alarms are because the government is expecting some mass-scale coordinated terror attack. I heard on a podcast yesterday even schools are practicing lockdown drills too. Worrying times. Keep up the great work. Yeah, well, I don't think they've got anything planned. I don't think they know that anything's planned, because they're always telling us that they're solving and sort of, breaking up terror plots every single day. And one thing we can do quite well is break up terror plots, because the people who do that sort of stuff are quite smart. Unfortunately, they're not running the government. Ruth in Fife says this: morning, Mike. First time at a conference. Not only did I find a safe haven for like-minded people, but I found well-educated, normal, common-sense people. Plus, I found hope. I had lost all hope, but I spotted it coming over the horizon. Positive vibes from Reform Conference. Well, I think a lot of people who were there would have said the same thing. Coming up next, we're going to speak to Henry Bolton, find out what his idea is going to be now that we've got a new Home Secretary who says she's going to have some meetings to work out how to stop the boats. Marvellous. 8:37.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 8:39. This one from Joe in Leicestershire. Quorn in Leicestershire. Is that a place? Quorn. I thought it was something you ate. Anyway, he says this: I asked the question myself earlier today. When the emergency alert goes off, what do we do? Put a mattress against the door, arm yourself with a broom, put a metal colander over our heads? Yeah, some tin foil is always a good idea. Regarding the closure of GP surgery, says Wendy, how many have voluntarily closed due to GPs retiring early on their amazing pensions? Well, that could be the case as well. It doesn't give a reason as to why there's so many closing. It's just because many of them are finding it more difficult to make money, apparently, which seems to be bizarre. Let's talk to Henry Bolton, OBE, International Border Control expert, though, because, Henry, very good morning to you. We've got yet another victim led to the slaughter, a new Home Secretary, this time in the hands of Shabana Mahmood. She's now apparently come out and said, well, let's have some meetings to see how we can stop the boats.
I haven't had an invitation yet, Mike. I've reached out to the past 4, 5 maybe of her successors.
Yeah.
Don't even get a response. I'll try again. We'll see. Look, she's got one hell of a mountain to climb. You know, even if she's really sincere about being, you know, a decisive approach to this. And she's got a mountain to climb because she's managing or leading a department that ideologically and structurally isn't prepared to do the job.
Yeah.
And she's dealing with a legal framework that's not fit for purpose. And by the way, I mean, yes, I heard Nigel talking about, you know, the 2 weeks to pass legislation. I'll tell you now, Mike, with absolutely no lack of certainty on my part whatsoever, if he produces legislation within 2 weeks or passes legislation within 2 weeks of getting into Downing Street, that legislation will be massively flawed.
Yeah, no, I don't think that's his point. No, his point is that he will pass the legislation, and then after that, 2 weeks later, the boats will stop.
The legislation passed in 2 weeks for that will be flawed.
But you're missing the point, Henry. He's not saying he's going to pass the legislation in 2 weeks. He says that after the legislation is passed, then the boats will stop 2 weeks later.
That also is utterly and completely unrealistic. Now, I have no problem in helping Nigel or anybody else try and solve this problem. My interests are not party political. My interests are entirely in terms of what's in the benefit of this country and the British people. And I'm telling you now, Mike, that is it doesn't stand so political, legal, diplomatic, or operational reality, that timeline. Now, can the boats be stopped? Absolutely, they can. They can be reduced to realistically by 80 to 90% in the space of about 8 months. But the idea that this can be done in 2 weeks is absolutely rubbish.
Right. Why can't it be done in 2 weeks? Because surely all you have to do is have a deterrent which stops the people from wanting to come, don't you?
You have to demonstrate that deterrent. You also, but from the time that you've got to spin up your planning. You've got to, and I'm saying 8 weeks, so 8 months from getting into Downing Street. So passing the legislation, getting all the operational planning in place, allocating the resources, and so on. That can be done in 8 months. What I'm saying is that the idea of doing it within 2 weeks, so that whole timeline, 8 months, doing it within 2 weeks of passing legislation will not work. You can start putting in place the measures that will do it, and you can have spun up a lot of the planning before that. But I myself have had discussions, not in recent weeks, but in the past, with very senior members of Reform who have rung me up and asked me about various things, and I've told them this. The thinking, Mike, is not there. Now, it can be there. And I want, if Reform is going to form the next government, I want them to succeed on this. So I'm not trying to be critical here. What I'm trying to do, and I'm not trying to be political, what I'm trying to do is make sure that people understand the complexity and the matrix of things that they've got to put together so that, unlike Brexit, where we left the European Union and there was no plan in place, although everybody said that they were going to do X, Y, and Z, there was no plan in place. I want to make sure that whoever is leading the next government has that plan in place, that it's credible, it can be effective. And that's my only interest.
Well, Nigel Farage says the reason that he will make it happen where others have failed is that they actually want to do it, and he doesn't believe that this current government, who have been in 14 months, want to do it, and he doesn't believe the Tories wanted to do it either.
I have no doubt whatsoever that Nigel, I have no doubt, Nigel, Richard Tice, Zia Youssef, the entire party, the entire Reform Party, like most of the country, want this to stop. And I have no question mark against their determination to do it. But sometimes, Mike, you'll know that, you know, determination isn't absolutely everything. It's vital, it's crucial, but you've got to have other pieces there as well. You've got to have done that planning. You've got to have been able to put those resources in place. You've got to have access to those resources. So there's a whole lot of things, and they need to be done at the political, legal, diplomatic, and operational level. They need to be done nationally and internationally. All of that has to be done. There's no shortcuts, but it can be done, and it can be done and put in place and start having an effect within 8 months. There is no question of that.
Okay.
But it's got to be thorough planning. And my message to Reform, and I say it again, because I don't want anybody out there to think that I'm trying to be critical of Reform. I am not. I want them to succeed in delivering for the British nation if they become the government. And they have got to start being a little bit more in-depth about and pay attention to the detail, which is the very difficult bit of doing politics.
Well, maybe they don't want to be
theatre
too,
and
maybe they
everything
don't want
else
to be
is
too
great.
detailed, Henry, in case Labour try and nick the plan, because they don't seem
There
to
is
have one either. But listen, good to talk to you. I've got to run. Henry Bolt, OBE International Border Control Expert. Thank you very much indeed. We'll be talking to Richard Tice coming up very shortly. See what he has to say about that particular challenge thrown down by Henry Bolton. Right now, this is, of course, Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham. What about this from David, who says, in Devon, why is free rail travel for TfL workers not classed as a benefit in kind and taxed by HMRC? Well, quite. I would have asked that same question. And why is Angela Rayner still an MP when she tried to rip off the taxman with a £40,000 stamp duty reduction, says Paul from Dorset. Very good question. More coming up after this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham. This, of course, is the home of common sense, the only place to be for the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Lots and lots going on, lots to talk about. Richard Tice coming up very, very shortly. First up, though, we're going to do 90 minutes in 90 seconds.
90 minutes in 90 seconds. From The Sun.
Welcome to Martin Blackburn, Northwest Sports Reporter at The Sun, because we've got Thomas Tuchel in our frames here this morning. Could return to England. Let's have a look. Martin, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
What can you tell us about Thomas?
Yeah. So Thomas Tuchel, of course, we're preparing for this big game tomorrow night, Mike, against Serbia in Belgrade, which will be the toughest test he's faced so far. And he's talking this morning in the papers about how he may be looking to long throws and long goal kicks. You know, a bit of echoing the spirit of the Wimbledon crazy gang to try and get a result there.
It's not very modern, is it? I mean, what are the sort of the intellectuals of football will not be stroking their chins over this one?
Not really, Mike. No, I mean, and the thing is, it's fair to say that in 4 games so far, we've not been sort of overexcited by what we've seen from Tuchel's England. And as I say, now the test really starts, and he's talking about going back to basics, I suppose. So,
yeah, because they weren't very impressive, were they, against Andorra? Only 2-0.
No, I think that I think people would have expected a few more goals, Mike, against what I think a team who are ranked something like 170th in the world. So I think we were looking for more goals than we got. And as I say, it's a very friendly group that they've been given. And this is the toughest test yet. They've got Serbia twice in the autumn, and if Serbia beat them twice, then England have a problem.
Yeah, and Serbia tomorrow night, 7:45. It's going to be a tough game, isn't it?
It is, yeah, definitely the toughest test that Tuchel has faced so far. Definitely the toughest game in the group, Mike. So they've been given sort of a very easy passage so far. So this is the time when we're going to find out a bit, about this New England that Thomas Tuchel has created.
Absolutely right. Well, we wish them luck all the way. Martin, thanks very much indeed. Martin Blackburn, Northwest Sports Reporter at The Sun. That's 90 minutes in 90 seconds.
90 minutes in 90 seconds from The Sun.
I say a very good morning to Richard Tice, MP, Deputy Leader of Reform UK, of course, fresh from a party conference at the weekend. It was a rather enthusiastic affair, if nothing else, Richard. My voice is not what it should be, but, I blame you lot for that.
Well, that means that you were having a good time. It was exciting. It was enthusiastic. There was lots of energy. 5,000 people each day. I mean, it was a true spectacular. And also, of course, lots of fringe events where some amazing discussions were held. And as I said in my speech on Saturday afternoon, despite the doom and gloom of the sort of the dark tunnel of socialism that we're in, there is light at the end of that tunnel, I can confirm, and that is the light of reform. And I just can't see this government lasting through until 2029. Nigel quite rightly said we need to get ready for a possible general election in 2027 or beyond, and that's what we're doing.
Yes. Well, I mean, I've been saying the same thing since about August of last year, because the wheels started to come off pretty early with this lot, and I always said, I don't know what it's going to be, but something will derail Keir Starmer and his government. And I mean, I see now, after the sort of the death of Angela Rayner's career, that he's on a very sticky wicket.
Well, you talk about rails and derailing. Anybody trying to get to work in London is derailed this morning by the tube strike from the tube drivers, who seem to want to be paid for a 5-day week, but they only want to work 4 days a week.
Yes.
And they want all sorts of other perks, including 75% of all rail travel across the whole of the United Kingdom for them and members of their family. I mean, this is really just a continuation of what we saw with other strikes, and the government, no doubt, or Sadiq Khan will cave in at some point. And this is what drives up inflation, a ludicrous pay demands from the hard socialist leaders of these unions, who I think very often are actually acting in a way that doesn't really have the full support of the majority of their members, many of whom are perfectly reasonable folk who set the alarm, who go to work and clearly understand you can't work 4 days a week and expect to be paid 5 days a week. I mean, it's like you, Mike, working 5 days a week and expect to be paid for 7 days a week. It's not on.
Yeah, well, luckily we don't have any problems in that area at this moment. I'm not going on strike anytime soon. But what about the other unions who are threatening the Prime Minister over the watering down of these workers' rights laws as well? Because, that's going to cost the economy an absolute fortune. There's a Euro battle going on now within Downing Street between the hard left Rayner sort of supporters, the unions, and the sort of Blairists. It's not going to end well, is it?
It's not going to end well. It's going to be brutal. It's going to be bloody. And this is why you could easily see a situation where, if the finances and the bond markets rebel, as I fear they will at some point, and the current Chancellor, emphasis on the word current, has to impose significant spending cuts and austerity, which is required to cut out the wasteful spending, then I think you're going to see a significant number of Labour MPs saying, can't deal with that, I'm off to Jezza, the fruit and nut combination of Jezza and Sultana.
Yeah.
So, and that may well be the way somehow that this all goes pear-shaped.
Just goes unravels. Yeah, absolutely right. Just to go back to the conference at the weekend, it was the first time I think that I'd seen anyway such media coverage of reform. And there was a massive media sort of presence there. There was all sorts of booths. I noticed the BBC had 3 booths to everybody else's 1. Because they can't have just one booth. It's a BBC Network, BBC Local, BBC Regions. But, there was a real sense that there was a sort of a rump of what you might call the mainstream media sort of trying to find negative stories to write, but they couldn't really find any.
Well, that's because there was so much optimism and hope at this conference. And for those watching, there's a picture of our bus. We were having meetings all over the place.
Yeah.
On top of the bus, in the bus, and everywhere, because I just get a sense of real energy. And Nigel quite rightly said, of course, we're going to have different views on different things and policies, but we should do that behind closed doors. You have a debate, you have a discussion, you reach a conclusion, and then you've got to go out and sell it and be disciplined in that. And that's what we will push very hard to achieve. And look, the country's heading towards bankruptcy. That's the harsh, brutal reality. That's why I spoke at length about the need to cut out the vast amounts of waste. I identified a whole load in the local government pension schemes at the beginning of last week. Billions and billions of pounds worth enriching city investment managers to the detriment of council taxpayers. That's what we're good at. That's reform at work, rolling our sleeves up, getting stuck in the councils that we are now running. And I think people are pleased with what they see so far.
Yeah, I think so. And as far as the state of the nation goes, I had a great insight from Simon Calder this morning, who had a meeting at Heathrow. He's the Independent's travel guru. He was up in Newcastle, so he decided because there was no trains that he would basically fly there. So he flew to Heathrow. And as he walked out into the sort of concourse where the underground was, he was greeted by a worker there who said, "I'm terribly sorry, sir. Welcome to Britain. Nothing's working."
I mean, you just couldn't. But at least he wasn't arrested by 5 armed officers.
True. Yeah, I mean, there is that.
Having misspoke on a travel bulletin. I mean, it could be worse.
It could be.
Well, I've just been in West London this morning, and because there's no tubes or anything, I was very sustainable. I jumped on one of the old Lime bikes and headed in to ensure I was with you in time. So look, there's pluses and minuses to all of that. It's great for the physique and the waistline, so what's not to like?
Well, I wouldn't want to see thousands of you, though, because I wouldn't be able to get past you in the Maserati. So what about what we just heard Henry Bolton say there? He says that he doesn't believe this claim of Nigel Farage's that he could get rid of all the boats in 2 weeks after laws passed. He says it'll take at least 8 months. What do you reckon?
What a gloomy, ridiculous, negative prediction. I mean, that's why the country's in such a state, because people don't want to be ambitious, don't want to set a bold target and say we're going to get this done. It's funny, isn't it? But the evidence shows Australia, they literally stopped the boats within just a matter of weeks when they had a pushback policy which was suitable for them. And I think if we have a proper detention and deportation strategy, as we outlined a couple of weeks back, then that will be a huge deterrent. Instead, despite the one in, one out policies trumpeted by the former Home Secretary, we had almost 1,100 people rock up, break into our country, invade our country on Saturday alone. That's another £40 million of liability on the taxpayer. So you better dig deep into your pocket, Mike, because they're asking you to cough up even more.
I know. It's absolutely shocking. Shocking. Richard, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Richard Tice MP, cycling around London, Deputy Leader of Reform UK, making sure that he's keeping himself fit. It's got to be done. Coming up in the next hour, Andrew Griffith is here. Isabel Oakeshot's going to join us as well. Also, Lord Walney, former government advisor on political violence. We'll find out what he's got to say for himself. Also, Sir John Redwood and Jacob Rees-Mogg. It's all happening here. It's the only place to be. This, of course, is Morning Glory.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. Coming up to 3 minutes past 9, I'm Mike Graham. Let's get a voice note from Deborah on the emergency alert, shall we?
Morning, Mike. Deborah here from Suffolk. So the phone alarm system doesn't seem to have worked. When I spent time in Spain, they used it there and it was unreliable then. Wouldn't it be better for each town and village in the UK to have its own siren, just like during the war, and as in the same way that they do in Japan? Sometimes the best ideas are the simplest, hey, and the cheapest. Keep going, your show's great, and great to see you at the Reform conference at the weekend. Cheers.
Deborah, thanks very much indeed. I mean, I guess it depends, as many people are asking, what you're supposed to do when the alarm goes off. I mean, yeah, they've got a tsunami alarm in Japan, but when you've got water coming at you at about a height of 8 metres, there's not an awful lot you can do to get away from it, unless you're already getting away from it, if you see what I mean. If you're standing somewhere near where it's going to hit, I'm not sure there's any point. We've heard from a few people this morning saying that they didn't get the message, and even if they had got the message, they'd rather not get it. Because if the end of the world is nigh, they'd rather not actually know. We'll be talking about a great many things coming up in this hour, including, of course, the state of Keir Starmer's cabinet. He's now got a new Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, on her first day at work, which was Saturday, effectively. 1,097 people crossed the channel in one day, right? Which means more than 30,000 have now crossed this year alone. She claims today that she's going to have some meetings to discuss how best to stop the boats. And you just think to yourself, really? Is that the best you can do? Honestly? Front page of the Daily Telegraph, unions are threatening Prime Minister over Rayner's workers' rights law because basically the unions are threatening Keir Starmer that they'll go on strike if, in fact, they try and water down any of the workers' rights bill, which is likely to cost companies in this country about £5 billion. Brilliant. Prime Minister to task Blairites in the new cabinet with growth. It says here on the front page of the Times that Starmer now wants reform on building and on welfare. He wants to give Pat McFadden the chance to try and reduce the welfare bill by doing what his last attempt didn't do, which was to get £5 billion knocked off the price. Well, if the backbenchers aren't going to have it, then it ain't going to happen. Meanwhile, he's got all sorts of problems of people trying to run to be deputy leader of the Labour Party, which he has no control over, including, of course, Louise Haigh, one of the first casualties of this government, who had to resign as Secretary of State for Transport. Why? Because she was a convicted fraudster, as it turned out. You know, brilliant. Let's get her in charge then. Put her in there instead of Angela Rayner. Good idea. 30,000 reasons why Labour won't stop the boats on the front of the Daily Mail, because, again, on her first day, she was confronted with the second highest number of illegal migrants to enter the country this year in a 24-hour period. Lots of other stories going on as well, including 2 GP surgeries every single week are closing in this country, putting even more pressure on what can only be described as the failing National Health Service. 0344 499 1000 is the number. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. And of course, as we mentioned, there was some kind of phone alert which went off yesterday, except it didn't go off. For an awful lot of people, they didn't have any clue what was actually going on, so it didn't really work. Good day to you, Mike, says Tim. There is no way the new Home Secretary is going to do anything about the boats, just another woke appointment by this drip of a Prime Minister. This government has to go. It's obvious they're incompetent. If I did my job as badly as they've done so far, I'd have been sacked ages ago. Well, exactly right. Let's talk to Andrew Griffiths, Shadow Secretary of State for Business and Trade. Andrew, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. Always good to be here at the home of common sense.
Indeed. Good to talk to you. I spoke to Simon Calder earlier from The Independent, who flew into Heathrow this morning because he couldn't get a train there for a meeting. And as he walked out into the sort of transportation concourse, he was greeted by a guy who was standing there from TfL saying, "Welcome to Britain. It's not working. There's nothing working."
I mean, nothing is working, is it? And my big beef with the government and their reshuffle is that let's put their money where their mouth is, right? They talk about doubling down on growth. Words are cheap. And yet the same government is now bringing forward a 330 pages bill, right? Imagine how much words there are in that.
Yeah.
That's going to give trade unions a greatly expanded set of rights. So more strikes, longer strikes, less notice strikes, I mean, the whole Penelope, London today is grinding to a halt thanks to the mayor and the trade unions, and we're just going to get more of the same. So I don't care who's playing the instruments. I want them to play a different tune.
Well, quite. I mean, but they've sort of moved around the positions in the orchestra, and the sound is still pretty bloody awful, isn't it?
I mean, it's a horror show if you're a business. Not a single business back this unemployment rights bill. It's terrible if you're a young person trying to get your first chance, because that requires an employer to take a chance on you. And they're not going to do so if they've been tied up like a mummy in red tape by this government. And it's not good for the travelling public or those who are waiting for an operation or who rely on any of our heavily unionised public services. So they have to shelve this bill. Every business is crying out for them to do that. And that's a real key test of whether this government is serious or not. You may think we know whether they're serious or not, but that is a key test.
Well, I mean, the thing is, a week ago they launched phase 2 of the government, where nobody even knew there was a phase 1. Should we play that? Let's have a look at what Keir Starmer said just a week ago.
Summer's definitely over, and this morning we've got all the number 10 staff together and talked through what phase 2 of the government is going to look like and feel like. So we go into phase 2, 1st of September 2025, in good spirits, confident and with conviction.
Surely they've now had to abort phase 2 and have moved on to phase 3 after what happened on Friday.
Well, the quicker we get to phase end, the better. But look, taking them at their word, and as a patriot and someone from business myself, I want them to succeed in the sense of having an economy that grows, is competitive, where people are coming here, not leaving here. But the ones that come here clearly are people who want to build businesses and contribute to the economy, get a grip with the small boats. And the very last thing they should be doing, and it's really, really important for your viewers, the last thing they should be doing is coming forward with this disastrous unemployment rights bill that is absolutely going to shackle our economy with some of the most inflexible labour markets of any country in the world. Let me say that again, any country in the world at a time when the economy is not growing and unemployment is already going up. It is a proper disaster, and they should be absolutely changing that. And I lay down the gauntlet. If they're serious about the national interest, if they're serious about the economy on which we all depend, shelve this blooming bill.
They're not going to do it, are they? Because they're now going to try and have another go with Pat McFadden at the helm of trying to cut down the welfare bill. But they've already failed once, so there's nothing's changed. It's like they're kind of rattling around inside of an empty chamber with really not the capability. I mean, it's the first time that I've ever been aware of a Prime Minister with such a massive majority who can't even get things past his own party.
Correct. And the big worry for us all is day by day, the national debt, they're borrowing more than they are able to raise. The national debt is continuing to grow. We spend as a country almost double our defence budget on debt interest alone, because Rachel Reeves is maxing out our credit card. It's not going to end well, Mike. We've seen this before. Some of us with slightly older memories remember the IMF and the 1970s. But I don't want it to get there. I want the government to change course, to be serious, shelve the employment rights bill that's going to make businesses hard to employ, hard to grow, and then focus on things that really matter.
Good stuff. Andrew, thank you very much indeed. Shadow Secretary of State for Business and Trade. Let's talk to Isabel Oakeshott now, Talk's international editor, because apart from anything else, Isabel, very good morning to you. I want to get your view on this story on the front page of The Sun. Judges' best wishes to the 7-7 jihadi, who, one, in my view, shouldn't be getting let out onto the streets of Britain anyway. He's also being told by a judge in this country it can't have been pleasant being in prison in America all that time for the 7-7 bombings. Are you there? Oh, we've just got a bit of freezing going on there. We'll come back to it. Kev from Devon says, Jacob Rees-Mogg for Reform Government Chancellor. Well, do you know, it's funny. He was at the Reform Conference and he was talking about being very happy to help out Reform if they should need any advice on how to run things in government once they are in government. But he doesn't want to become a member of Reform. Gary says this, Mike, if you get the warning message and it's for a tsunami, you will only know it's time to kiss your behind goodbye. Yeah, Well, when it comes to talk of the emergency alert, this from Katie. We were in the pub when the alert went off. The collective decision of all of the locals in the pub was if it had been a real alert, we would lock the doors and get another round in. Very sensible. That's what I like to hear. Alison in South Wales says, morning, Mike. Severance pay is not normally for people who voluntarily resign. Two-tier yet again. Absolutely right. I think we've got Isabel back. Isabel, very good morning to you.
Sorry about that, Mike. I don't know what was going on this morning, but I did get the emergency alert yesterday, and it was quite weird because I was literally on a runway at Heathrow, and the plane was about to take off, and everybody's like this beeping noise started, and it didn't start with everybody at once. It sort of was a bit intermittent, and then it built up into a crescendo. And as you can imagine, people were kind of freaking out a bit because they're like, oh my God, is this some kind of emergency alarm on the plane? You know, we were literally about to take off, taxiing down the runway. So in the case of pretty much everyone on board the plane, it seemed to work, but there was still some going off about 5 or 6 minutes later, which does suggest that it wasn't completely fine-tuned, that everybody got it instantaneously.
Well, as you might imagine, Keir Starmer's tweeted out this morning his first tweet of the day about how successful it was, that millions of people actually managed to get the alert. Well, it's not really a government claim, is it, that?
Well, I mean, pity poor Keir Starmer. He hasn't got much to say is successful at the moment, so clutching at straws that a beeping noise went off on most people's phones is about as good as it gets this morning, particularly after 1,000 migrants crossed the channel on the first day of the new Home Secretary's job. And I think this is fascinating because Shabana Mahmood is being hyped up as a very hard as nails new Home Secretary, who is prepared to think the unthinkable on the Channel migrants, and it's going to become apparent pretty quickly whether she is or she isn't. Is this just hype? And I don't know where I would put my level of optimism, but I'm hearing so much about they're about to sign a one-in, one-out deal with Germany. Well, if that's what being hard as nails looks like, then I don't think that's going to make any impact whatsoever.
Well,
I mean, one in, one France hasn't resulted in anyone out yet.
No, I mean, we had 1,097 coming in on Saturday, which happened to be her first day in charge, right? And apparently her first thought this morning is to have a series of meetings with her colleagues to see how to stop the boats. Well, I'm sorry, it's 14 months in now. Surely they should have had one or two ideas already.
It is completely baffling as to why they're only thinking the unthinkable, if they really are, which I don't believe it, today. This isn't a new problem. And I thought that we were reassured time and again that they were, quote, absolutely determined. That phrase always tells you that a politician isn't actually doing anything. They were absolutely determined to do whatever it takes to smash the vile people smuggling gangs. None of it's happened. So we're going to need to see some very, very rapid results from this Home Secretary for anyone to have any confidence. We're just showing, for those who can't see it, some footage of dozens of migrants scrambling into a totally overcrowded raft. And I'm just thinking of Darren Jones and his claim that the majority of them are women and children. Well, I don't see any women and children at all, actually, in that footage.
My favourite...
but I do see Darren Jones being promoted.
Yeah. My favourite migrant of the day, which hasn't been done for a while, is a guy in The Sun today, Dragos Lucinski, 38 years old, a Romanian people smuggler. He tried to dodge being booted out of Britain by claiming he was in talks to play for Manchester City.
Oh, great. That's just marvellous, isn't it? Isn't that grand? Or as Kev would say, isn't that special?
I know. It is absolutely unbelievable, isn't it? But 30,000 people having come since the beginning of the year, the biggest, I think, a single amount in this, period up to now, eight and a bit months basically in. We could end up with at least 55, 60,000 before we get to the New Year's Eve, couldn't we?
And what we hear is that the new Home Secretary is considering doing something about the European Convention on Human Rights. Considering, as if they haven't had actual years to work out what they were going to do with the ECHR. And the problem, as we all know, is that this is a party dominated by hard left ideologues and human rights lawyers at the very top. And so they're not, I don't think, going to tear up ECHR to withdraw from it, which is the only way we can root and branch, begin to start again on this problem. A little bit of tinkering is only going to lead, I suspect, to more juicy work for lawyers who all they want to do is basically string this out as long as they can.
Yeah, I mean, we keep hearing that there's a new, sort of thought process, as you say, the thinking of the unthinkable. Now talking about possibly putting migrants into, military camps without mentioning the word camp, obviously. But a lot of people are already getting in touch with me saying, hang on a minute, if these are currently used military camps, what's supposed to happen to the people that are currently living there? And are they going to be under lock and key? Are they going to be, detained? Or are they just going to be wandering about freely as and when they want?
These have to be detention centres. I mean, there is such a facility actually just near Oxford Airport, they're just almost by where Nigel Farage did that big press conference a few weeks ago in which he talked about mass deportation. There are facilities in this country that are not properly being used. This one at Campsfield, I don't believe that's actually being used for detentions yet. And there are plenty of unused military facilities that might need modernising. I would be very wary of what I feel they're almost bound to do, which is go and find some old barracks and then say they need, £30 million of upgrades and refurbs to accommodate migrants. We've got to use what we've got, and we don't need to be gold plating it. If it was good enough for our armed forces, it should be good enough for illegal immigrants, and let's get on with that policy. I'm very concerned that the policy of trying to shut down hotels, which we all agree is an absolute must, is simply leading to the dispersal of illegal immigrants into communities where they're very much not wanted, even harder to be kept an eye on if they're living in free housing provided by the taxpayer, pushing up rents for ordinary people and making it ever harder for British citizens to actually get a roof over their heads.
Absolutely right. Given what happened on Friday with the demise of Angela Rayner and the reshuffle that went on subsequently, people are saying this morning that Keir Starmer surely is at the beginning of the end of his reign, isn't he? What do you think?
I mean, it certainly feels like that. I was very struck by a column over the weekend by Dan Hodges, who's very well connected within the Labour Party, in which he said that 90% of the parliamentary party, and I quote, hate Keir Starmer. And you can hardly blame them given where they are languishing in the polls and just given how absolutely hopeless his performance has been. But then you've got to think about the mechanisms, or rather lack of them, for removing Labour leaders. It's really, really difficult. And I just wonder how this would come about. I think it's clear that there are plenty of people sharpening the knives. There are plenty around him who fancy themselves as a replacement. It's been a very good few days for example, Wes Streeting, Andy Burnham, and any number of other leadership hopefuls. But how are they going to get rid of him? I think this guy is so out of touch that he doesn't really realise how despised he is, not only within his own party, but up and down the country. Yeah. And he'll probably hang on.
I think it comes from Andy Burnham or somebody like that who takes one look, gets in with some of the Blairites, who know a thing or two about controlling the narrative, which Starmer doesn't seem to be able to do. And they say, look, if you don't get rid of this guy, Labour are out not just for a generation, but probably forever.
I mean, it's really very difficult at this point to be Keir Starmer within the makeup of the Labour Party that he's got. If he wants to see off the threat from reform, or at least mitigate it, he's got to move to the right on his policy. But if he wants to stay in position in the party and remain friends with the unions who control so much, he has to go to the left. And he's just absolutely stuck. And that basically is why we see him effectively doing nothing. Because if he goes one way, then he upsets one faction of the party. If he goes the other way, he upsets the other. So it's easier just to sort of have this stasis and lots of shouting about being determined to do things, but in actual fact doing nothing at all.
Yeah.
And this workers' rights bill, I think, will be a real test of that. You know, spearheaded by Angela Rayner. We just heard Andrew Griffiths just now giving an excellent sort of analysis of why it would be such a disaster for British business, which is, you know, the last thing it needs right now is, as he put it, to be mummified in yet more red tape and regulation. But that is what the left of the parliamentary party and the unions are pushing for.
Absolutely. Shocking state of affairs. Isabel, good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Isabel Oakeshott, Talk's international editor there, reporting in on what she thinks is likely to keep Starmer hanging around for a while. I don't know I agree with her, but we'll see. Let's get a voice note from James, who's got some road rage.
Mike, have you seen the state of our roads this morning? OK, I understand it's 9 o'clock, it's rush hour, but I am talking about every single road that you turn onto is gridlock. This is another problem of immigration, is we can't even get anywhere now. As British people born here, we don't even have our freedom of movement. We can't get anywhere.
It's true. James absolutely has a point. I've been saying for years, you know, there's a reason why you can't get anywhere in this country, why there's traffic jams everywhere, because there's more people here than ever. And there's more people driving cars here, probably illegally, than there's ever been as well. And plenty of people who don't know how to drive their cars here, even legally, because they're not used to it. Brian in Worthing says, morning, Mike, here I am again, shaking my head even harder than usual. Can someone tell me who the hell is running this country? The backbenchers, the civil service, the unions? It sure as hell isn't the government. So what is the point in having them? No hope, no future. They've got to go. Fair enough. Couldn't disagree with any of that, Brian, really, to be honest. Coming up, though, let's talk to Lord Wolney, former government advisor on political violence and disruption, a former Labour MP, of course, as well. We're going to ask him about how Starmer manages to get away with sacking Rachel from Account's sister and what it means for the Chancellor of the Exchequer. This is Talk.
The understanding of quite how rotten the state has become, the sclerotic nature of our civil service, the legislation that has hamstrung us, the international treaties that prevent us being a democratic nation, that these things need to be undone, and the best people, the most committed people from all parties need to decide that. The two who are most on this side are the Conservatives and Reform.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 9:27. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through, of course, until 10 o'clock when Mark Dolan will be here in for Julie Hartley-Brewer. How about this from Brian in Worthing? No, I've done that one already. Gary, no, I've done that one as well. Mike, all these Conservatives, no chance of me voting Reform. Why would we vote for anyone or part of a party that drove us to where we are today after 14 years? Reform needs to really wake up because it's going to cost us all the general election if they keep on importing and accepting those has-beens. Are they just Tories 2.0? Well, there's a lot of people in Reform who don't like the idea of Tories coming into the party because they've already proven themselves to be busted flushes. And clearly one of those people is Alex Wilson, who's now the London Assembly member. He says, Steve from Yorkshire says, every time I hear Alex Wilson, I think, wow, what a breath of fresh air he is. He's a great communicator and speaks with so much common sense. The bloke's great. Mike, very happy to have you back. Not at all. Don't mention it. Let's talk now to Lord Wolney, former government advisor on political violence and disruption. He's been a Sun columnist. He's a former Labour MP as well. Lord Wolney, very good morning to you. Nice to see you. An awful lot of reshuffling going on last week. And I've got 2 sheets of paper here to cover it all. And it goes all the way from Douglas Alexander, Trade Policy to Scotland Secretary. Bridget Phillipson remains as education, but her brief has been narrowed as Pat McFadden has taken over a bit of her job. Hard to take in all this, but one of the people that sort of lost out was Rachel Reeves' sister as well.
Yeah. Eloise was not sacked, and she was moved to the position of Solicitor General. Yes, I think it is significant that the Labour Party chair is now being taken by an MP, an attorney who is close to Keir Starmer, the new chief whip. Jonathan Reynolds has, by most people's assessment, has performed relatively well as business secretary when compared to many of his colleagues, but has been put into that position of chief whip, which is again key to ensuring that the government can get its business through, of course. But also, I think this is an organisation, this is a centre which is gearing up potentially for a battle ahead. So it's put royalists in those key political positions, and that probably is significant, and is part of the story of why Ellie was swapped into a different position.
Lord Wolney, we're just going to come back to you in a second because we're going to try and fix there's a little fuzziness on the noise that we've got there. I'll come back to you in 1 second. Let's get a voice note first off from Darren.
Morning, Mike. Darren working over here in Holland. I can see Starmer there sitting in his office 5 seconds before 3 o'clock for the emergency test alarm. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Oh, it didn't work. Have a good day, mate.
Yay! Yeah, you can imagine that. I mean, 5, exactly right. David's in Exeter. Hello, David.
Hi, Mike.
How you doing?
I'm good. Just following up on the Reform Conference. So have you guys in the media there picked up on anything substantive coming out of anybody in Reform on defence and security during the conference?
Defence and security of the realm, do you mean, generally?
Of the realm, yeah. Well, there's an interesting subject, isn't it, with Chagos and everything else,
Yeah.
Jonathan Powell.
Listen, I must admit, I didn't, but I wasn't over all of it. I mean, there were an awful lot of fringe meetings going on. There were speakers galore, many of whom I didn't hear or didn't listen to. So I can't tell you exactly whether it was discussed or not. I'd be surprised if it wasn't, to be honest.
Well, I mean, look, I'm not prejudicing somebody in the fringes speaking about it, because there are a hell of a lot of veterans I know that have signed up and joined Reform because of the nationalistic views. But what I want to know is where is the substantive policy comments coming out there, any of the keynote speakers from Reform in defence and security? And this is obviously, Mike, in the context of war.
Yeah.
We've just had the civil alert test yesterday, and Ursula von der Leyen talking about escalations in the Ukraine. Well, where is the defence and security spokesperson in Reform and what are they doing in policy?
Right. Well, according to what I've just found here, Reform's defence policy is to increase spending to 2.5% of GDP by 2027 and 3% in the next Parliament when fiscal and economic conditions allow. I'm sure there's more to it than that. I'm sure they've got policy if you look for it, but I don't know what their policy on everything is.
Yeah, Mike, that was written with Colonel Frederick Cheetham. Now, I was working with Colonel Frederick Cheetham as an advisor.
Okay.
And he resigned a week before GE week because he had a heart attack, the poor chap. But nobody has been replaced. Reform have not replaced anybody in defence and security to act as their spokesperson. So why is that?
Okay. Well, maybe you should ask them. I don't know. I can ask them next time we get somebody on, but I shall try and figure it out for you. Good to talk to you. David in Exeter, thank you very much indeed. I think we've got Lord Wolney back. Lord Wolney, sorry about that.
Hi, no, I'm not sure what's going on with my mic, but hopefully you can hear me a bit better.
Yeah, that sounds a bit better. Yeah, it was a bit muffled before. So you were saying that sacking Rachel Reeves' sister from Cabinet was not something that's going to particularly bother Rachel Reeves?
Well, I think Rachel knows that the key to the Labour government's success, the key to her success as Chancellor, is whether the economy can return to sustained levels of growth or not. And in one way, that is a very complex thing, which is proving very difficult. In political terms, it's really simple. So I don't think she will be losing too much sleep over it. I think what the centre around people around here are doing is gearing up for a rocky period ahead, and they want real loyalists in those key positions, like the Labour Party chair, like the position of chief whip, because obviously when the government is struggling in the polls like it is, and it faces difficult elections next year, which, unless things are turned around really substantially, are not going to be good news, then of course the pressure increases. I was in Gordon Brown's Downing Street at the time when the vultures were circling, and it is just a feature of where you are in the country, and the government's not in a good place at the moment.
No, it's not. But it sounds as though Keir Starmer's being assailed from all sides. I mean, there's a piece in the Sun today by David Wooding, in which he likens Downing Street to an episode of The Traitors, where he goes, like, pretty much everywhere he looks, there's somebody that he can't trust. So, I mean, it's not just one faction anymore; it's kind of everyone.
But it's vital that Keir and the government do pick a course and they stick to it. And it's equally important that course is that resolute focus on how you tackle the situation with the small boats and the crisis there that is now beyond tested the patience of the country over several governments. And then the other focus is on restoring the economy. And if they can do that and pursue the course the policies which are going to be necessary to do that, which are going to make many traditional Labour activists deeply uncomfortable, which are absolutely necessary, one, for the country, and two, for the political survival of the Labour Party, then they give themselves the best shot. But that does mean a level of discipline and a level of focus, and not being constantly knocked off course by the latest group of soft left people within the activist movement who've come up with a new bright idea.
Right. But, I mean, the problem for him as well on that front is surely the deputy leader's election, because, there's obviously people lining up on that front. You've got Emily Thornberry, who already hates him for not giving her a job in the cabinet. You've got Louise Haigh, who hates him because he fired her. There's a whole bunch of people who want to be leader. Lucy Powell, possibly, who's also out of the cabinet now. There's a lot of names of people there that have a reason to disrupt him.
Yeah, that's right. And if you look at this from the public's point of view, if the Labour Party starts a public debate and soul-searching session through the position of election of the deputy leader, many of the even more members of the public, I think, are going to go, what the hell is going on here? You've got various parts of the country running, policy areas running out of control. You should not be talking to yourselves, and it will do them more damage if they are seen to. So I think that the leadership will want to send a strong message to their MPs that there should be one candidate, and it should be the one that Keir wants, and if they can get enough MPs to back that, then there won't be a full-on election. I'm sure that's what they'll be working towards behind the scenes now. But then the question becomes, is this bunch of MPs going to listen to that? They didn't obviously listen to him over key welfare debates and made the whole government look a dreadful mess because of it. But they are playing with fire if they think that they can have this grand debate now while so many problems in the country are so urgent.
Yeah, I think that's right. But I'm afraid I think it's still going to happen anyway because I don't think they can help themselves. I think it's just the way they're made. John, I've got to go. Thank you very much. John Woodcock, Lord Walney. Cheers. Nice to see you. Let's get a voice note from Louise on emergency alerts.
Morning, Mike. Louise here from Sheffield. I'm really, 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 really gobsmacked of the amount of people who are upset that the emergency alarm didn't work. Why do we need the government to tell us to be even more alarmed than we already are by their presence? To me, it's just one big scare tactic. It's like frightened you all into oblivion, just like they did during COVID. I turn my emergency alarms off. If there's a real emergency, I'll know about it. I don't need the government to tell me.
Well said, Louise, and this I think is great from Clive in Kidderminster, right? He goes, I got the emergency alert yesterday and ignored it. I then got a text from the wife saying, get the kettle on, I'm home in 5 minutes. I was off to settee immediately, and I know which emergency I react to. Power to the people, Mike, he says. Well done, Clive. You did the right thing there, by the way. Yeah, always jumps to attention when you get told to put the kettle on. Coming up, we're going to speak to Jacob Rees-Mogg and Sir John Redwood.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 9:42. I'm Mike Graham. This, of course, is the home of Common Sense. And coming up, we're going to be joined by Jacob Rees-Mogg. First up, though, Sir John Redwood. Just before we hear from Sir John, have a look at this. Darren Jones, who's now Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister, as well as doing a bunch of other jobs as well. So he's currently the second most powerful man in the country, I suppose you might say. Here's what he's got to say about the reshuffle.
But also with our relationships with allies and others around the world. And likewise, Shabana Mahmood, who was the Justice Secretary, who came in and really got a grip of the prisons crisis that we'd inherited. You'll remember the prisons were full, the justice system had come to a complete standstill. Shabana was able to grip that really difficult issue, to fix it and to get the reforms in to train. We know that she's now going to apply that reforming zeal to tackling issues, for example, on small boats, which of course the public want to see us be able to stop.
I have to say, Sir John, very good morning to you. I must have missed it when she managed to solve the prisons crisis. I thought she'd let 26,000 people out of prison, and yet the prisons have still remained remarkably full.
Well, you're quite right, Mike, but if she is the woman to do it, why didn't she tell us immediately how she was going to do it? This is something that, as a senior legal advisor in government, she must have been well briefed on and probably part of the conversation. The Prime Minister says this is the woman who is going to be better than Yvette Cooper. Surely they would have agreed with each other what they're suddenly going to do. Instead, on her first day in office, assuming she was working on her first day, she must have been helping her officials try and find hotel places and extra flats and accommodation for the 1,000 more people who came on that first day in office. Complete disastrous performance from her, and no message to us and, more importantly, to the people in North France as to why they shouldn't come.
Right.
And that she's got to make changes to say it's not worthwhile coming. Why, for example, did she, along with the rest of the government, vote to strip out of the law the very good thing the Conservatives had belatedly put in just before they left office, which was the clear proposition that if you come on an illegal small boat, you can't claim asylum. Well, as 95% of them do and want asylum, why on earth would they carry on coming if that law had stayed in place and was properly enforced? Why don't they do that?
Well, exactly. And on her first Monday in charge, which is today, we hear that basically what she's doing is organising a day of meetings with colleagues with the best ideas to stop the boats. Well, they're 14 months into government now.
Yeah. Well, indeed. I mean, the ideas are pretty obvious, and they must have been discussing them when they rejected some of the best ones. And why don't they, for example, pick up the very detailed amendments to their bad immigration bill, which the Conservatives put forward and which they voted down? These were based on the dreadful Conservative experience of the Conservative years, when they didn't change the law sufficiently to make it less attractive or impossible to come here, based on that bitter learning from trying to wrestle with these problems in office. That was good advice, and instead the Labour government told all their MPs to vote it down. Well, when they did that, why didn't they have a better idea? Most of the things they did in their immigration bill actually weakened our powers to tackle this crisis.
Yeah, absolutely right. Sir John, we've got to cut it short today, I'm afraid, but thank you very much indeed for joining us. Sir John Redwood, former government minister, there talking sense about what on earth it is that exactly Shabana Mahmood is going to bring to the party that wasn't already there. Dave says this from Cole. Good morning, Mike. Isn't it strange? Jonathan Reynolds has been put in charge of Chief Whip, which involves maintaining standards and discipline within the Labour Party. Yeah, it is a bit weird, that one, isn't it? Because he's not exactly a man without stain, shall we say. Let's talk to Jacob Rees-Mogg now, former leader of the House of Commons. Jacob, very good morning to you. We're not quite hearing you. I don't know whether he's on mute down there. Hello, Jacob.
Hello, I can hear you loud and clear.
Yes, I know I can hear you.
I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes, I can now hear you as well. Thank you very much indeed. A beautiful looking day down there, sunny Westminster. I saw you briefly at a Reform conference the other day, on Saturday, just as I was leaving. You've sort of offered your help to Nigel Farage. You say you don't want to join Reform, but you're very happy to become an advisor in some way, shape or form.
Well, it's not quite what I said. What I'm happy to do for anybody is explain from my experience as leader of the House of Commons how you actually get legislation through and how you get things done, and what the delays are, what the obstacles are to getting things through government. I found in my period in office it was almost much easier to stop things than to get things done. And a new government in 28-29 will have such problems to deal with that it will need to get things done and get them done urgently.
And what did you make of the Reform Conference, what you saw of it?
Oh, it was very positive. I went with my daughter, Mary, who has actually joined Reform, rather letting the side down in some ways, but nonetheless, I'm rather proud that she's willing to make her own decisions. I think that's important. There was a very positive mood. I thought the people were very similar to the people I've met over many years at Conservative associations. They are the pillars of their local communities. They're involved in local charities. They're involved in local activities. And they are civically minded. So it's good people, enthusiastic people who want Conservative solutions, very similar to the backbone of the Tory party.
Yeah. Or what the backbone of the Tory party was, perhaps. I mean, Nadine Dorries has joined Reform with the words on Friday that basically the Tory party is dead.
I think Nadine is absolutely wonderful. I loved working with her as a minister, and she always has an ability to come up with a pithy phrase. But I think dead is overstating the position. Not in the best shape we've ever been in since we started possibly at the end of the Civil War. You can argue over the precise date. But we've recovered before, and it's really about what you believe in and what you want to get done. And in a first-past-the-post system, the key actually is uniting the right so that we all work together and not worrying about whether people belong to one party or another. It's what is in the national interest, and the national interest is getting rid of this terrible government where nothing's happening today. Westminster looks quiet because nobody can come in because the tubes are all on strike.
Well, that is the problem, isn't it? And there's lots more strikes to come by the looks of things. On the front page of the Daily Telegraph today, the unions are issuing another warning to the Prime Minister, saying that if you try and water down Angela Rayner's workers' rights bill, there'll be more hell to pay.
Well, the workers' rights bill should be renamed the Lots More Strikes bill, because that's actually what it sets out to achieve. And I hope that with Angela Rayner having left, Labour will water it down, but there'll be a lot of pressure from the left. And it'll be really interesting to see who they go for as their new deputy leader, because that'll probably be a push to the left and therefore will be further undermining Keir Starmer's authority.
Well, we just spoke to Lord Wolney, John Woodcock, former advisor to Gordon Brown's government, and he was saying that he's one of those in Labour who thinks that they should have a sort of a centrist candidate who gets picked by Downing Street. That's not how it's going to play out, because there are too many people that hate Keir Starmer, I think, around him, who are going to make sure it's somebody from the left.
All the names one has heard about are people who have a reason not to be enormously grateful to Keir Starmer. So Emily Thornberry's been mentioned, Louise Haigh, one overlooked, one fired. Neither of those would be helpful to him. Ed Miliband is very popular, extremely nice man as it happens, so I always wish him well, but very much on the Green issue, extreme hardline left-winger. So there are three candidates immediately who would not necessarily be helpful to Keir Starmer's third way style approach.
Yes, I dare say that's why he's left Ed Miliband where he is and left him in charge of net zero rather than moving him out of the way, because according to the Times this morning, they're trying to try and water down some of those net zero kind of pledges. I don't see that happening either.
All of that becomes much harder if Ed Miliband becomes deputy leader, from which position he would be the obvious challenger to Keir Starmer in any leadership contest.
Presumably as a Tory you would love it though. I mean, he might be a nice man, but he's a hopeless politician, and he was useless the last time he led the Labour Party.
Well, I'm very worried about the net zero approach. I think it's ruining the country. I mean, I think it is making us cold and poor, and we need to get rid of net zero as soon as possible. We need to use cheap sources of fuel. We need oil and gas, as much of it as we can get. We need fracking. We need the whole works so that we can make the economy thrive. The whole economy is dependent on cheap energy. Even broadcasting, look at the energy used in your broadcasting studio. Even broadcasting is dependent on cheap energy, let alone transport, distribution, manufacturing, steel. We need cheap energy. Net zero must go. And so anything that promotes that is, I think, not in the national interest.
Yeah, exactly right. Nigel Farage was interviewed on the BBC yesterday, amongst other places, and he said when he was asked about Boris Johnson perhaps coming along with Nadine Dorries as a double act, he said, I don't think that would work. Is Boris out of politics forever, do you think, or is he going to sort of emerge somewhere?
Boris Johnson remains the most charismatic figure in British politics today. I mean, Nigel's giving him a run for the money, but I still think that Boris is the most charismatic figure. I hope he has a big role to play in the future of our nation. I haven't spoken to him recently, so I can't give you any private insight into what his plans are.
But would he be welcomed back into the Tory party, do you think?
Well, if the Tory party had any sense, yes. You need people in parties who people have actually heard of. And that's one of the things about the reshuffle. Nobody's heard of any of these people, have they?
No.
We can't remember most of their names. It was Boris Johnson. Everybody knows. I stopped the next 5 people who came past. Every one of them would know who Boris Johnson is. And they'd call him Boris. They'd forget about the Johnson bit.
Right. But this is the other thing. I mean, the more, you know, it's supposed to be my job to know who's in charge of which businesses of state that we're talking about. And this morning I couldn't remember who the Department of Transport was headed by. It turns out it's Heidi Alexander. She was one of the ones that didn't get moved. But as you say, I mean, it's hard to keep up. I mean, most people don't care.
No, and it's very bad news, actually. I think one of the biggest mistakes of the reshuffle was moving Pat McFadden.
Yeah.
Because the Cabinet Office is central to the running of government. I was in the Cabinet Office for a bit, and you need people there who know how it works. And after a year, you've begun to work out what's going on. And changing people the whole time means that government doesn't actually happen properly. And there are roles that are really administratively important, where you need stability. So that type of move, I think, is very unhelpful, not to your party politics, not to your manifesto agenda, but simply to competence in government.
Keir Starmer's first tweet today was about the, not today, it was first tweet yesterday. Tens of millions of phones were successfully sounded across the country during today's emergency alert test. Did your phone go off, Jacob?
No, of course it didn't. I switched it off. It's all frightful nonsense. The problem with government warnings is that they'll be giving me a warning a moment that I'm standing in the sun and I should put sun cream on. They start well-intentioned and for major issues, and soon they warn you there'll be a gust of wind. I was actually at a memorial service yesterday for the first people who died in Operation Market Garden in the last war. And I was speaking, and the person who introduced me said I had only 5 minutes because the alarm was about to go off. Well, I finished in the scheduled time. Brief is usually good at these events. But I didn't hear any of the alarms when it ended, so I'm not sure how many of them went off. Or else they'd followed my advice and switched them off. It's very easy to do. Just go onto your iPhone, go down to notifications, scroll right down to the bottom, and toggle, I think is the word, rather unusual word, to the left, and off it goes.
Brilliant. I wouldn't normally expect you to be advising people to toggle to the left, but we shall probably best leave it there. Jacob, thank you very much indeed. Jacob Rees-Mogg, former Leader of the House of Commons, giving you the perfect tutorial in how to switch off the phone so that you don't get one of these pesky alarms, which most people don't seem to have got, apparently. Listen, we're nearly at the end of the show. Coming up, we'll be meeting the most charismatic man in the room. He is, of course, the one and only Mark Dolan. He's not in the same room as me at the moment, but that's okay. We'll see you in a minute.